Ian, you ready? Are you ready?
Fire in the hole.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you and welcome. We're opening here the Westborough Select Board meeting here today, Tuesday, September 12th, it being 6:01 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance if you are able.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and just a reminder, today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded by Westborough TV. With that, do we have anyone here for open forum who would like to speak? Yes. We have two.
Deputy Chief Bernard?
Pardon me. Please introduce yourself first,
Okay.
and you have 3 minutes.
Boyd Conklin, 8 Water Street. Deputy Chief Todd Minardi. With all the officers around the country, state leaving police forces in droves so they don't end up in jail for the rest of their life, with their family financially ruined like Derek Chauvin, who in my understanding was following police protocol by the book, what is your recruitment strategy to mitigate the persecution of your officers so as to encourage them to join the Westborough Police Force? And another question, with the racial bias tracking application that Chief Laurie brought to Westborough, how are you ensuring that your results comply with the misinformation, disinformation of the state of Massachusetts and the Biden Justice Department under Merrick Garland, that crimes of all racial groups are equivalent to their proportion in Westborough, Massachusetts? And there's a link here to Paul Kersey of New York City, 2022 crime statistics, with non-whites committed 97.1% of homicides and 98.9 non-fatal shootings, and New York City is 32% white. And to the select board for the country club demolition, if you want to stop the town intelligentsia from tearing it down, then we have to put an article on the town warrant to get these town citizens to vote to override their tear down and replace scheme. The 800 grand in the cooked up repairs estimate is predominantly for the climate change, rip out the gas and go all electric, aka Pete Dumbeck and Christy Williams pet projects for all town buildings, sustainable Westborough Climate Action Plan. And the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act upgrades, leaving off the table the balloon framing for fire hazard. It's made it this long, another 200 years should not be a hair on fire scenario for our betters. If you spend less than a third of the building's assessed value every 3 years, you don't have to worry about the ADA. What assessor Jonathan Steinberg's got it valued at? Say $1 million. That's $333,000 in 3 years. $20,000 would have the place roof fixed in that little problem area, the sheetrock replaced in the basement by the cooler, water damaged area, and the pigsty of the fryer area completely degreased on the surface and in the electrical outlets, and have it ready for the civic kitchen to start back up. As I understand it, they are willing. Perhaps Jennifer Sullivan at the Board of Health can inspect the grease fryer area more often. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Conklin. A reminder that those comments are to the Select Board in particular and not to anybody in the audience here. All right, thank you. We have another person here.
Hi, I'm Melanie Board, 51 Warren Street. In full disclosure, I serve on the Finance Committee and I am liaison to the Police Department. So, after speaking with other town residents, I feel obligated to speak today to you with regard to the Select Board's apparent delay in naming Chief Todd Minardi actual chief and not interim. I understand in prior meetings there have been discussions regarding the ability/responsibility to open up the vacancy and interview outside candidates. I ask, what might we achieve from this? Since I've lived in this community, we did that and it got us 5 years of representation, which Chief Laurie, who did a great job, however, he transitioned to what he felt was a better opportunity. 5-year commitments is not the stability our community needs. We're currently in a state of influx and uncertainty. This small hallmark town has experienced growth and societal changes that warrant having a strong, dedicated force. What would give your residents greater peace of mind, another short-term outside candidate or a 28-year committed employee of our town? In Chief Minority, you have tested leadership and clearly someone who has been willing and capable to step up and take on the duties of a chief without the permanent title. Others in the community will be arriving prior to your decision and vote, and be assured they come as proponents of naming Tom Minority chief. Please take this under consideration.
Thank you. Any others for open forum? All right, thank you. With that, we will move to the next item in our agenda. That is the future community center. Town manager has a presentation.
Thank you. So this presentation is going to start by talking a little bit about the history of the community. It's investigation of a community center. As well as where the board is looking at locating one at this point. So just to go back, and I'm sorry this is hard to see up here. If we go back to 2012, there was initial investigation of a community center when we looked at the renovation project for the Forbes Municipal Building. Folks might remember that there used to be a gymnasium in the lower level of the Forbes Municipal Building that was controlled by the Recreation Department. It was really important at that time to maintain the control of a gymnasium for recreational programming. And so at the time that we were talking about the initial renovation project and the removal of that gymnasium, we were also talking about the potential development of a separate facility. And at the time, this was the intended design of that facility. So really just a couple of basketball courts and there's one classroom, some bathrooms, and then recreation offices. In 2016, the town approved the renovation of the Forbes Municipal Building, but it did not include at that time the development of this design. In 2018, the town participated in the development of a strategic plan. One of the priorities of the strategic plan was the design and build of an intergenerational community center with activities for all ages. That was under one of the high priorities of diverse cultural and recreational opportunities. In 2021, the master plan identified the development of a community center as a high priority under the open space and recreation goals. There's a lot of text on these slides because we hope to put this online so that folks can look at it following this meeting. But this is just verbatim what's listed in the master plan, which talks about the importance of providing public recreation facilities, and this high priority action includes the investigation of the feasibility of constructing and operating a multi-generational center. So the master plan does talk about the community center potentially being located at the former state hospital property, which is something that has been talked about in town for several years since the town decided to acquire it. So the proposed location, back when we decided to acquire the state hospital property, was the recreation fields at the state hospital property. So this conceptual design here was commissioned by the then recreation director, Alan Grady, looking at how we might lay out the property that we were planning to purchase. And it was inclusive of a community center, which at the time is just shown on here, with really no discussion of what the interior would look like. In 2023, we completed the senior needs assessment, so we talked further about the need for a community center. One of our questions was specifically around the interest of folks completing the survey, and also key informants and focus groups, understanding their interest in having a multi-generational center. And so you can see here in the yellow, we see a lot of interest in an all ages community center, but I think just as important as we see an interest in a community center that might house seniors and youth, as long as that there is a separation. So separation between the programs maybe for seniors and then programs for youth. And so that really makes up the majority of the respondents.
Christy, just we're seeing yellow here on the screen.
Sorry, it looks white.
That's
here.
okay. I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to make sure.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
So also out of that study came some discussion about the disadvantages of the current senior center, being the actual physical location of the senior center. Folks noted that the traffic patterns coming out of Rogers Road were difficult to take those turns. Interviewees also related desire for the space to have more active and physical offerings for seniors. This also comes out of the 2023 needs assessment, but there's discussion about the importance of physical access to the community assets, which can be challenging for older people. So we started to look at the potential of locating some of these senior activities in the downtown area so that some of these local assets could be more easily accessible coming from the senior center. They also talked about limited transportation options, and then that lead to the decrease in community engagement. And then also the 2020 master plan talked about the importance of really developing the downtown. So bringing people into the downtown, increasing walkability, bikeability, and there's a specific discussion about the promotion of mixed-use development at the Bay State Commons, exploring design interventions that could make Bay State Commons accessible and welcoming and vibrant. So all of this is to discuss the fact that the board has been approached with an opportunity to purchase the Boston Sports Club building located within the Bay State Commons. We feel like this is really what we've been leading towards since 2012 when this discussion initially happened. We feel that it addresses a lot of the things that have been brought up by the community over several different engagement opportunities. And so tonight we would like to present this idea to the community in hopes of putting it on the October town meeting warrant. So a little bit about the building. Currently, Boston Sports Club is located on the second floor of that building. Right now, the first floor is currently occupied by Spirit Halloween, but previously was occupied by Steinmart. The entire building is 63,500 square feet. The first floor is 31,000 square feet, second floor 32,500, and the purchase price that we would be seeking authorization for is $8.8 million. So as you can see up here, that's approximately $139 per square foot. Estimated new construction currently, which is what we would need to do if we were to locate out at the state hospital, a location that also would not meet all the needs that we've identified in these community studies, is right now estimated at approximately 800 square feet, $800 per square feet for a new building. So the same size construction would be over $50 million. So how much does that mean for the taxpayer? $8.8 million borrowed over 20 years at 5%, so just an estimate would be about $68 on the average single-family tax bill in the highest year. And so this shows here where the Bay State the Boston Sports Club building is located, at 1500 Union Street. So the proposed plan really would be to engage the community in a process to build out the interior of the building. So we know that we would like to relocate the recreation department to this building and take advantage of the space, and we'll get into what the space really is in a few minutes. And we would also like to relocate the senior center to this building. And as you can see here, the senior center right now is just under 9,000 square feet. So to even relocate the current senior center into the first floor of the building, they would be in a space that's actually more than 3 times the size of their current space. I do want to underscore the fact that there would be a public engagement process. I think that's really important. The idea is to create that multi-generational center. Multi-generational programs and activities typically come out of both the senior center and the recreation department. It's always been thought that the recreation department and senior center would create that multi-generational center. But it really is a blank canvas in terms of the first floor of that building, and we really want to hear from the community what the expectation and interest is in filling out the rest of that building. This just shows here the layout of Bay State Commons. You can see where it's located. Here is really what we would be intending to purchase. So in addition to the building, we would also be purchasing some of the parking area, and the total land area would be about 2.58 acres. And you can see what we would be purchasing, which is outlined in red here. This just shows the building layout. So again, the first floor being that 31,000 square feet, completely open floor plan. If you go into Spirit Halloween now, you can get a sense of it, but there are some sort of fake walls. So it's very large space. And then on the second floor, if you've been to Boston Sports Club, you are aware that there's a very large space in the middle of the building, but there's also several rooms already existing. So there's partitioned off spaces and multiple rooms, as well as a pool and basketball facility and locker rooms that could be utilized. We do have photos of the Boston Sports Club, or the second floor of the building. Important to note here, these pictures all make up that open area as you walk in. The part of the equipment that you see here is not part of the purchase, so we would not be continuing to own the equipment that you see in these photos. Here you can see the basketball court that's part of that facility, as well as the pool. Up on the left is a multi-purpose room where certainly we could do all kinds of activities, but would certainly expect that the recreation department would run programs, and also the senior center could run programs there. And then certainly the community center expectation is that it would be available to the community. The middle picture here shows the cycling room, so a smaller space, but a space available for maybe a separate program to run. And the top right is not a full room, but it's the top corner of the building, and so it's partially partitioned off to create some more private space. There's a break room that's available. There's a meeting room, and then there's when you walk into the sports club, you can see to the left behind the desk that there's this sort of partitioned off but open office space. So as we look at this building, we think that it does meet a lot of the needs that we've articulated and the community has articulated over several years. If we move forward with this, the next steps would be the October town meeting warrant article. The warrant article would authorize the board to acquire the property. It would also authorize the board to purchase the property, so appropriate the funds, which would be the $8.8 million as a borrow. And then we would also need to use funds to do due diligence on the property, which we would need to appropriate back into budgets through this article. And finally, we would be looking for funding for that public engagement process that we discussed. Then we would pursue the community engagement process and lay out that first floor, and then look at the second floor needs. And then finally, at a future town meeting, we would be asking for fit up of the building. This lays out a proposed timeline, so similar to the steps I just articulated, where in September the board would be able to authorize or execute a purchase and sale agreement. This purchase and sale agreement has many contingencies in it, one of them being the town meeting vote. So it just by signing the purchase and sale agreement, it does not compel the town to move forward with that purchase. In October, we would have the town meeting vote to authorize the purchase and the funding. In the late fall, early winter, we would start to plan for that community engagement process. And then in the spring or early part of 2024, we would expect to close on the property and then engage a consultant to help with that process. And then finally, we would move forward with the request for funding of the construction within the building. I'm just going to go back to the photo of the building. I think, the board has been talking about this with the current owners for a long time. I think that we see a lot of benefits to the community with this space. Certainly one of them being its immediate access to the medical services, which are right there in Bay State Common, restaurants, grocery store, and then, beyond that, the Bay State Common, where we hold a lot of functions for the town, and then the downtown, which, as we noted, is something that we've been working to reinvigorate through the master plan process. So I don't know if the board has questions or if you want to make some additional comments.
I'll start. Thank you. Thank you, Christy, very much. So I think, you can correct me where I get some of the history wrong here, I think prior boards had maybe had interest in this building when it had a prior owner, and unfortunately that wasn't reciprocated. And with the change in ownership in the building, the town manager brought it to us to say, hey, a while back there'd been a conversation, do you want me to, check in? And she did, and we were, excited to hear that the Grossmans were interested in this project, to think of a local developer willing to sell a portion of their property to the town, I don't know who that call is, is quite remarkable, and just terrific on their part, and personally very excited about this opportunity. And I'll let everybody else chime in.
So, yeah, I'm very excited. As the board is aware, Ian and I collaborated with our town manager. We were asked by the board through executive session to work through the details of the offer and negotiation aspect, and it was a great process working with Grossman Development Group. I think this is look, there's never a great opportunity to spend a lot of money, but this is a great opportunity. I think when you reflect on what is on the bottom of that slide about the cost of public construction, we've seen that with some other projects that have come along in the not too distant past, and so we know what that cost is. So this represents a tremendous opportunity for a building that is relatively new, has been very well maintained, and represents opportunity, as Christy has already articulated, to many, really the entire community. So I don't even want to say groups, the entire community. So I'm very excited about its potential, and I look forward to certainly hearing, from the town as we head toward town meeting. But it has my full support.
Yeah, I would echo what Shelby said, and really through the process, had a lot of discussion. The board was able all to kind of walk through the building. I think the opportunity to basically get a ready-built building, relatively new. We still have contingencies related to doing inspections on this. That will be part of our agreement and purchase and sale, because that's what we do when we purchase things. But basically, while it seems like a lot of money, I do think that the numbers, as we think about constructing something new, that this opportunity provides in the downtown area, which was highlighted by the town manager as kind of important through our master plan, through our senior needs assessment. It really is an opportunity that I don't want to call it once in a lifetime, but it's a pretty unique opportunity, in my view, to get something in its location towards basically in the back of that plaza, so it does kind of stand by itself. It's not in the midst of everything, but it has that access to the rest of the plaza, and I think it really will invigorate the plaza from an economic development standpoint, but really be provide opportunity for the full community to have that community space and community center. some things that, this is something that's been, as the representative of the Capital Expenditures Planning Committee, because we've talked about this has been in what I'll call our long-range plans, because we had other priorities before bringing a build of a new facility, which has been the discussion in the past prior to this opportunity to come before us. But it is something that's been on that list for the capital expenditures planning, long-term planning for the community. I would like to highlight, too, that the senior center, as we looked at the senior needs assessment, what the town manager brought up about that traffic pattern, especially getting out. The folks know coming out of Rogers Road, if you're turning right, it's okay because you're on that side, but if you're turning left, you're basically right at the intersection of Lyman Street and East Main, and it is a scary place to get out of, many times during the day. Having an opportunity here with the traffic patterns that are in here, with the parking that's here, again, I think it's a tremendous opportunity for the town. I hope the town sees that. We think, as the board, bringing this in front of the town for this discussion and the opportunity to purchase it is absolutely the right thing to do. Again, it's the community's decision, the town's decision through town meeting to agree to move forward. But personally, and I know the board is, but personally for me, just fully endorses. I think the opportunity, this doesn't come around a lot, and I think it's a really unique opportunity, unique building, fully supportive of, and hopefully the community is as well.
I'll add to that. It's a unique opportunity in a couple of ways. And one thing, having served as a past rep to the Capital Planning Committee, the multi-generational community center every year gets pushed out, right? It's a big ticket item, new construction. We always knew it was going to be a big ticket item. When I sat on the committee several years ago, the number being tossed around was 35 to 42 million to build pretty much the plan you saw there, maybe a little bit bigger. But this is unique not only in the fact that we can get a building in place and do an upfit for a fraction of that cost, and certainly a fraction of new construction. Even if you said, well, we don't need this much space, let's build a building half the size, you're still talking $25 million, plus. It's also unique in its location. And, and many people express concern that waiting till we could build something up near Lake Chauncey is great, but you have to drive there. This is immediately walkable from 3 of our schools. It's not an unreasonable walk from another 2 schools to get there. So it makes it accessible there. There's plenty of parking. Part of this that the town manager didn't mention is a reciprocal agreement that lets people visiting this center use the entire parking lot for Bay State Common and vice versa. So we don't have to worry about running out of parking around the facility or use of the facility. So it will bring people in. It'll bring people into the downtown. I remember way back when the basketball court was at Forbes, people would play, they'd leave, they'd walk down the street to some of the restaurants that existed at that time. We have that opportunity again. People will go to events, they'll go to programs, they're in the center, they're walkable to the new restaurants and shops that are opening on Main Street and South Street around the Rotary. So I think it serves the master plan and the strategic plan in a very broad sense, and it'll let us bring high-quality services, recreational, community center activities to the community in a way that's convenient and affordable than starting from scratch.
Well, there's not a lot I can add here, but I will say that, first of all, I'll say thank you to Christy and Town Council for working on this, and certainly Ian and Shelby for leading the effort and bringing this to the board. It is an exciting opportunity. I first sat on the Master Plan Committee team as a resident, probably, I don't know, it was 5-6 years ago, whatever it was, and this was loud and clear, something that everybody wanted in the community, and that was reaffirmed with the senior study
And in my 1 year on the as the liaison to the Council on Aging, I heard regularly from the senior community on how the current senior center needed some significant updates. So to me, this is another opportunity to get the senior community the facility that they really need moving forward into the decades to come. It's going to provide a lot of additional space, a lot of additional capability, and I'm really eager to see that happen. My final thought on this is I would rather pay $8.8 million with a upfit at some point of some number, but it's definitely going to be far less than $50.8 million. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity for the town. And then I would just say, while I would have loved to have it over on my side of town on Chauncey, I can certainly see the benefits of having it where it is. This makes a lot of sense for many of the reasons of the board already laid out. So I am firmly supportive of this project, and I hope that the community gets behind it as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, and just one last comment. As a board, we're all in agreement that there will be a vigorous community engagement regarding, process regarding this over, once it is approved at town meeting to determine exactly what folks want to see downstairs. That is basically a blank canvas on the first floor, which is ideal, and then even, potentially what they want to do with the rest of the building. But, we couldn't be more excited about this opportunity, and thank you for coming here and listening to that. With that, our next
Sean,
item.
just real quick. I think the other piece is we're introducing this now. Town meeting is coming up in October. We want to have the ability to get this out now, to have the ability for public comment, thoughts, concerns, questions, et cetera, as we come into town meeting. So that will be an emphasis of us as a board. And through the town manager as well, but did want to say that is not just hopefully with an approval, that we will go through a process similar to the charrette processes that we've done in the past, where we pull the community together, anybody that's interested to kind of brainstorm and think about what we can do. But I think prior to that, running up to town meeting to have that public engagement, we're open for questions, comments, et cetera. We want to hear it. So that hopefully we can get as many questions as possible answered prior to town meeting. So thank you.
Sean, can I just add one,
Yep.
just to build off of what Ian's comments? I think that for those of you perhaps here, as well as those who may be watching at home or will watch this presentation or see the presentation that our town manager will post online, it's like a lot. It's like, whoa, where did this come from? And so I think there's certainly an appreciation. Understand this is something, if you've followed our agendas, this has been posted as an executive session item for a while now. So we've been working on this for a while, and through the negotiation period. I think that community input will be critically important leading up to town meeting, and we welcome that. I think, but I think that the town also, I hope there's an appreciation for, this is a commercial private entity wanting to do something with this building. This is not land we currently own, so it's not, like a long process or longer process maybe that we've gone through with, say, the library or a school building renovation or what have you. So time is of the essence, which is why we're getting this done now, and then we have a town meeting coming up shortly. So I appreciate if there's a sense of it's a lot, but it's a lot right now, and it needs to happen quickly if we want this opportunity. And if we don't move on this opportunity, which is a very unique one, it will go away. And I think that that's very important that we all understand that. So.
Thank you, Shelby.
Yep, you bet.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is a site plan overview for 161 Milk Street and 220 Turnpike Road. While we're waiting, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hello. My name is Carolyn Berg. I'm with WDA Design Group. I'm a landscape architect.
Barry Atchison, also with WDA Design Group, civil engineer.
Thank
We're
you.
here to represent our applicant to develop 161 Milk Street.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. This project is located at Milk Street and at Turnpike Road, 220 Turnpike Road, 161 Milk Street. And it is it's 2 lots, approximately just over 9.5 acres. And the site is a redevelopment, proposed redevelopment. It currently is an existing
Could you just speak a little closer?
Yes, hello.
If
Yes.
it's just closer, you don't have to speak louder, just closer, that'd be
Okay.
great. Thank you. I
The
see
site-
some folks interested in hearing what you have to say.
Sure, thank you. The proposed project is for the redevelopment of an existing abandoned roller rink building into a new self-storage facility, and upgrades to the existing paved areas, which are the driveway, parking, utilities, and landscape. The proposed project also includes the construction of a new office and storage building with the associated updates to the driveway, parking, and utilities. The site access will remain on Main Street, and it will be enlarged on the Route 9 area. Currently, the site is largely paved, and the proposed buildings will go over existing pavement. We will be applying for the permits as necessary. The grading utilities will conform to the local codes and requirements. And the applicant is proposing to relocate his business, from one side of the town to this location. The proposed building is 20,000 square feet. The portion that is for the office space is 10,000 square feet, 2 stories. And then there's an attached warehouse structure, also of 10,000 square feet. Are there any questions?
Just for clarification, the plan that you're looking at up on the wall, the square on the top left-hand corner is the old roller rink. It'll be, the existing building will be redone, new facilities in there, and turned into a self-storage facility with somewhere between 150 individual self-storage units. The middle building in there, it's a single building with one portion of it, or 5,000 square feet, double 2 stories. That's office for the applicant's business, and then on the right-hand side will be storage for that. What we're just coming to you today for is the lower portion. It's actually 2 properties split at the diagonal. We don't know what's going to go on with the top portion of that at the moment. However, the road will continue through under this particular project. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Yeah, and I think for folks at home who are wondering where this location is, that very top little building in the corner, right, is Gerardo's, correct?
That's correct, yep.
Okay. All right, to help folks orient
On the
themselves.
left-hand side
In
is
the white.
Westborough Plaza.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Gwen?
So
Go ahead.
I do have a few questions, and I realize at this point, I'm just raising these as a member of the board, so certainly not asking you to answer, but as leads on the project for consideration, I do see our town planner is here as well, and I think that the planning board will first hear this project next week, as I understand at their meeting, so. My first comment is, my understanding is that on Milk Street, there is no proposed ground signage. Is that my understanding? Correct?
No proposed ground signage on Milk Street.
Okay. So, I don't know. I guess that's, my understanding is the property can only have one ground sign. I guess I was surprised to not see that, being that there is an expectation, according to the information we received, that traffic would be using that Milk Street entrance. So I think for just practical purposes, signage is probably important. So I don't know if as part of that permit, but I think that that should be considered as appropriate, sign and, sign. But I do think signage on Milk Street is important. I certainly appreciate why signage on Route 9 is important as well, because there's a lot of traffic that's going there. But perhaps the planning board can take that under consideration for two signs, given the size of the property and giving its unique location on those two major areas. With respect to signage on Route 9, this sort of also touches on safety, line of sight coming over that hill. I don't have to tell you, you guys know the site better than I do, is of great concern. As I actually was driving there today and just taking a look at that and looking at traffic just even in the early afternoon. So I think it would be helpful for me if you could point out where the proposed signage is proposed for on Route 9. Could you just give us a perspective? I didn't see it on the drawings.
I'll put it in the top new portion of the.
Okay, okay,
There will be a plan,
Okay.
but it'll be 30 feet near requirements, 30 feet back.
Okay.
So it shouldn't impact any line of sight or traffic
okay,
on Route 9 or thereabouts.
okay. I want to emphasize just concern. I do understand we received a copy of the traffic study. I have not had a chance to look at that, so maybe some of those answers are in there, but concern with that Route 9 entrance, but appreciate that as part of the plan, that would be the entrance for larger vehicles coming in there, not using that Milk Street entrance, which I think is a smart decision for many reasons. I neglected to say, first of all, I'm thrilled that this business is deciding to stay here in Westborough, and I presume this is an expansion and an opportunity, so I apologize for leaving that off in the beginning. Also want to recognize and appreciate the creation of a solar canopy down on the lower portion here, as well as seems like agreement or willingness to offer the town a generous easement as it relates to the B-Walt bike pedestrian multimodal trail, so which is great. So much appreciated. My question would be, being that the B-Walt runs there, and that there is a residential area, Carlton Gardens, just to the south, as well as business, I guess, to the west, would be, are there any sidewalk improvements anticipated exiting from the property there on Milk Street? I do understand we just removed a crosswalk that used to be on Route 30. We moved that further up, so that would have to sort of be navigated, but considerations of sidewalks for employees, as well as just other, just again, consideration of the B-Walt that is anticipated. I'd like that to be considered or at least discussed. And then I guess from a safety perspective on Milk Street, as you're heading south, so when you get off, headed eastbound Route 9, and you turn onto Milk Street, there is a point where it's do not enter. I just I would like to make sure that the traffic study has contemplated increased traffic, and maybe people that aren't familiar with, using this facility initially, there's, I believe, one do not enter sign on Milk Street if you're coming off of Route 9 with the intention of wrapping under Route 9 to go onto Route 30. But I'm just very concerned with that. It is one way. It becomes one way at one point. So making sure that it's clearly as part of even the business plan of how do you get people there safely. Right. Yeah, turn around theoretically, but I have seen people choose not to. So, and if we're driving traffic in there, I just think we need to be aware of that. And then one final comment on where Milk Street and Route 30 connect. We should probably have a name for it. I'm going to call it the hump. Right, so, and it's a very congested intersection, which is,
Route 9?
nope.
No, 135 and
135.
Oh, 130.
135, I'm sorry, I said Route 30, my apologies. Thank you.
the hump right
So-
across from West Meadow Plaza.
Yeah, the hump, I don't know, we have a
Everyone
bridge and a hump,
We know what
right?
it is.
Yeah.
We know, we've all hit it.
So, I understand that the Milk Street entrance is intended to be for pedestrian, what? Local box trucks, resident, passenger vehicles, sorry, I couldn't think of, not pedestrian. But I guess just as part of this, the practical nature, if we have any trucks that are trying to make that turn from 135 coming into town and turning up to make that turn in, that's going to be a major jam-up nightmare of people bottoming out. So I think that needs to be understood, what the plan is. I understand that's a state road, and that brings in some complexities. So appreciate you taking notes, as I see you're doing, and I look forward to hearing comments from the board. And given the complexity of this site, at some point, it might be helpful to get an update from the planning board once they do their initial review. I don't know if that's possible.
Can I?
Please go.
Yeah, I guess to add on to some of the comments from Shelby, my concern, I believe, as you take a right turn out of that lower exit up towards Route 9, and if you were to want to come back towards the center of town, the inclination would be to take a left-hand turn on that one-way street before you hit the one-way area out back, or the bidirectional area going back out to Route 9. My understanding is that one little one-way area is actually, there is a no left turn. You cannot go back to Westborough. My other understanding, and you certainly correct me wrong if you know any better, is it's a state highway all the way down to the West Meadow Plaza entrance area. So I'm imagining that there's going to need to be a fairly significant rejiggering of that area to ensure that your customers can come and go in both directions. So I would just look for the planning board to better understand what, if any, requirements and involvement from the state needs to be had to ensure that we get proper signage, that we get proper right-of-ways in that area. And Shelby asked the question about the line of sight up on Route 9. There's another business going up on Route 9 there, just over that hill as well. It's a number of cut-throughs in regard, cut-ins off of Route 9, and so I am concerned about where that is located on the property, to make sure as someone's accelerating off of 135 up onto Route 9 that they've got plenty of view, and it looks like you've moved it pretty far to the east, which is good. I don't know if there's any additional movement can be there, but I think the further away from 135, the better, for all those reasons already mentioned. But thank you for bringing this forward. I look forward to seeing the project move forward, and I too am glad to see that the business owner is staying within the community.
Thank you. On this side?
I don't have much, actually. One is just echo, though. I mean, this has been call it an eyesore for a while. It'll be nice to have that property rehabbed and put to good use. So happy to see that happening and redeveloped. One thing, and I don't know if I think you may have said it and I missed it, but you talk about the kind of the two pieces of property here, the road remaining, but is there for the upper section of roadway, is that going to be improved as well, or is it just using what's existing there in terms of the pavement, et
The
cetera?
pavement will be improved to meet the local rules, regulations, and so forth, and capacity.
Okay. And anything, when I look at the top there, just at the top of the page, is there any changes proposed to the kind of entrance and exit from Route 9, or in terms of width, or?
No, the only change from what is existing today will be the exit to Route 9 eastbound is shifting down 75 feet or thereabouts to gain the additional sight lines and distance.
Perfect, okay. Shelby hit mine, it did have residents that were involved in the B-Wall project and ensuring the easements. So I echo that, glad that to see that in there as we continue to build out that trail as well. So I have no further comments. Thank you.
All my questions have been shared, with the exception of one. In knowing that you're moving the exit onto Route 9 Turnpike Road eastbound further east for sight lines, that's also happening at a point immediately after the road merges from 3 lanes down to 2.
Correct.
And I guess my question, and I know it's challenging because there isn't much shoulder there, and I expect there's some wetlands and other complications, but having a reasonably length acceleration lane, because you got people coming over the hill doing 55 miles an hour, sometimes more. You've got the people coming off of 135 desperately trying to get up to speed in that right lane. And I worry about just giving cars, and particularly truck traffic that's going to want to exit and head east, enough room to at least get up to a reasonable speed so they can merge in safely, and we don't have cars slamming on the brakes or swerving around to make it happen.
We have discussed with traffic engineer and discussed with some of the DOT requirements along that road, having done some other projects along here as well. There is quite a wide shoulder
Yep.
there on the side. We've even noticed 18-wheelers parked overnight on that shoulder. Not sure if that's
So there,
good, bad,
yeah,
or
I mean,
but there's plenty of shoulder there.
Yeah,
Whether
so
we're
the-
gonna be able to
Use it, right.
stripe it to an acceleration, deceleration lane, that'll be determined by DOT. If not, there is significant, and we'll maintain those shoulders as best we can.
and I guess the question is if there's a need for town support with Mass DOT to, give up shoulder, which they love to hold on to their shoulders, but give up shoulders for acceleration, deceleration for safety, that I would ask through the planning board, that come back to this board, so that if a letter of support or a request to our delegation is in order, that everyone's comfortable with the safety aspects of that.
Appreciate it.
Can I just add one thing, just to follow on that, hearing the fact that, I haven't seen it, but that trucks parked there, whatever, whether there's an ability through the town or in conjunction with the states and the state highway to get no parking signs or something like that there. I've seen them on other parts of highways, just so we don't have that issue where, as the building builds out, that you have tractor trailers parked there, because that defeats the purpose of having that wide shoulder. So just something maybe we can add in there as the planning board's looking at it, to see what we can do about proper signage at that exit spot.
And if I may add something, I was just thinking as well, I hate to say it, but because of the difficulty on that Route 9 135 interchange, I suspect that you might have people who might want to cut through this parking lot and get up on Route 9. You all and the planning board might want to have a conversation about business-only signage for traffic through there. It looks like it's two-way, it's a two-way road kind of in between there, so I'm assuming that there would, there could be people, might want to do that, so it's something to
Yes.
consider. Thanks, Sean.
All right, no, thank you. All right, so these are comments that we are providing that are going to go to the planning board. Does everyone feel like their comments have been captured today and we can
Yep.
review in our minutes? All right,
Yes.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Good luck moving forward.
Next, we have the American Legion. They have a request for a Beano permit to be held at the Senior Center on September 29th from 6 to midnight, if anyone is interested in Beano.
Has to be approved first.
Right. Any comment or?
I would move to approve the application for license to conduct the game commonly called Beano, as submitted by American Legion, Stowell, Parker Post 163, to be held on September 29th, 2023 at the Westborough Senior Center, located at 4 Rogers Road.
Seconded?
Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? 5-0. Okay. Our next item is a request to delegate the Director of Public Works as an authorized signatory for Oak Street Water Treatment Plant per and polyfluoroalkyl
Come on.
PFAS improvements. Sorry, thank you.
So this is a request to execute that. That was approved at town meeting. This project was approved at town meeting using the SRF, or State Revolving Loan Program, as a funding source. This document would authorize Chris Payne, our DPW director, to execute any and all agreements. And then the board, after you take your vote, the chair could sign the documents in your packet.
Right. Any questions?
So I would move to authorize Christopher Pant, Director of Department of Public Works, to execute all agreements and to take any and all other actions necessary related to the Oak Street Water Treatment Plant PFAS Improvement Project.
Second.
Second. Questions? All those in favor? 5-0. Okay. All right. Hey, we're on time. All right. The next item is the interim police chief Todd Minardi presentation, discussion, and consideration. First, may I say, interim chief Minardi, before you get started, over the past few select board sessions, we've been trying to iron out what this promotion process should look like. Felt it was kind of new to the town, and you know, sometimes for the sake of transparency, the process can look a little bit like sausage getting made. We appreciate the town and interim chief Minardi's patience as we determine this process, and feel like we have something going forward. And with that, thank you, Chief.
Sean, could you just, for everyone's benefit, just kind of walk through how this is going to flow, just so everyone can understand that?
Sure. So, Interim Chief Minardi is going to give a presentation, roughly 30 minutes. We have some questions that the board has determined is provided to the town manager. She has collected all our questions, sorted through them, and we will then take turns asking those questions following Chief Minardi's presentation. At the end of that, there'll be a brief additional comment period for additional question or clarification. Okay, that sound right?
Thank you.
All right. With that,
Thank you. As you can see, Todd Minardi, Interim Chief of Police. If you didn't know, my wife's favorite color is purple. Actually, she wanted me to wear a white shirt, but I think she shrunk it in the laundry. So, anyways, we'll get started. As we had spoken about before, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, my history, what I've done, and okay, I don't know what just happened. Sorry.
That's okay.
The cable's back.
what I've done in town, some of the things we're faced,
It's okay.
brand new laptop, but it should be working fine.
It's the cable.
Yeah, might be.
The cable.
The cable?
Great way to start.
Technology.
All right, I'll try
Gets us
this
all.
again. So, but I did want to start with one slide. It's what I call one of my first guiding principles, and it's a pretty easy sentence or statement. The police are the people, and the people are the police. And I say it's one of my first guiding principles because it came to me very early on in my experience in law enforcement. One of my first training academies out in the Park Service out in North Carolina. And the interesting thing about it, it's from Sir Robert Peel, founder of London's first modern police agency, the Metropolitan Police Force. It was codified into law in 1829. Sir Robert Peel has been taught through United States police academies. I assume they're still teaching it. It's been a while since I've been in one, but he had 9 guiding principles to found the Metropolitan Police Force, and this was part of one of them that struck me, because if you think about it, I think we lose sight of it, that the police really are just citizens in our community that are being paid to wear a uniform, to perform a function that the community is asking us to perform. So it's something that stayed with me, and it still rings true to me today. But to get on to the exciting part, my personal history, I was born and raised in Westborough, 4th generation. I graduated from Assabet Valley. I went through their carpentry program. I actually built quite a few houses in Westborough. At some point, I decided that I wanted to move on to a different profession. I attended the National Park Service Law Enforcement Ranger Academy out in North Carolina. It was a great introduction into law enforcement. Their application process had ended for the year, so I came back home, and Chief Parker was actually starting the first reserve police officer program in Westborough. So I was accepted into that academy, worked as a reserve police officer. Ultimately hired as a full-time police officer, went through the Worcester Police Academy. What is going on? At one point, I attended West New England College. I got a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. A little bit later on, I went through Anna Maria's master's program for master's in public administration. Excuse me. I did just want to mention that I have got the Trilogy Award for the FBI's Law Enforcement Executive Development Association program. It's kind of their shining star. They're a pretty outstanding organization that train all across the country. So I've been through a ton of training, obviously, in my career, but that's really one of the highlights. My history in the department: I started as a reserve in '94, patrol officer in '95. I was promoted to sergeant in 2001. I only had about 5.5 years on the job, supervising people with 4 or 5 times as much time on the job than I did, which was, an interesting learning curve. Became a lieutenant in 2006. As you know, the deputy chief first in the department in 2018, and I've been serving as the interim chief, obviously, as you're aware of, since July. Talk a little bit about my past accomplishments. I put the slide up there because I always have tried to make things better, but I'm losing my own screen. I put this quote up because I think it relates to the way I've run my career, and it says, "Great accomplishments shouldn't be the end of the road, just a starting point for the next leap forward." I don't look as promotions as being a time to put your feet up and say, "I did my job, it's time to take a break." I look at it as more responsibility. It's time to work harder, smarter, and faster. And I think I've done that throughout my career. So as a patrol officer, I was awarded the Medal of Valor for Bravery early in my career. I'm proud of that. I did a few other things. was in the motorcycle unit. I was a firearms instructor. I was actually involved in a pursuit that went all the way out into almost Rhode Island on 146, so I lobbied Chief Parker to get stop sticks for our cruisers, and we've actually had them ever since. So even as a patrol officer, I was having an impact. As a sergeant, I started that first formal roll call. It's something we still do today. We review about the last 16 hours of our activity so that when the officers come back from time off, they hit the road, they know what's been going on, they show up at a call that we've had multiple times. It's, they understand where it's been. I brought in a national training organization to run an active shooter instructor program. The first we had here in Westborough. Wrote a grant for equipment to run that training. We did scenario-based training actually in our high school. We're working now to I'm sorry. I've never had this problem, so. On the top.
Here comes Pat.
This is all your fault. It's not showing up on my screen either. It's not showing up on the screen. I don't get any of my notes. Definitely not getting promoted because of my IT skills. Okay, thank you. You get a raise, Mom. I didn't talk about, so I did patrol officer, sergeant, all right. Lieutenant, look, I was a lieutenant for a long time. I'm not gonna go through all of these. I probably could have made 4 or 5 slides on what I did as a lieutenant. Certainly some of the important things. When I started, I was running the patrol division. I brought in our first electronic fingerprint scanner. They're pretty common now, but back then nobody really had them. And it was pretty cool when you print somebody and they get their information back in 5 minutes and you find out they just lied to you about who they are. So I was director of training. I was, a lead firearms instructor. I was also involved in hiring and staffing. I did internal affairs investigations. I've easily brought in over $1.5 million worth of grants. Was involved actually about 7 years ago with upgrading our mobile and portable radios so that we can now communicate with pretty much every law enforcement organization in the state. I was instrumental in getting us tasers. One of the biggest things I'm proud of is the scheduling and time management system that we have. We went from pencil and paper to a web-based system. You can access it on your phone, your tablet, whatever. It tracks all our overtime. It tracks our time off. It's phenomenal. I could spend a long time talking about it. Pretty much did the same thing with the detail system. We used to have a sergeant would sit on the phone for hours calling people to see if they wanted to work a detail. They now can look on their phone, bid on a job at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The system fills it automatically. So it's definitely saved a lot of work hours. The drone unit, we started one before it was really popular. There were, Fourth Amendment issues, what have you. We've actually found people with our drone. A week ago, we found a 13-year-old that left a program. She was out in the swamp. The drone located her. It's a huge force multiplier. It's an outstanding tool. We're happy to have it. Certainly, some of the proudest things, you're all aware of the jail diversion program. I don't need to go into length about that. I was also one of the people that spearheaded the Westborough Police Foundation, which is having the 3rd annual golf tournament next month.
Good plug.
So as a deputy chief, I oversaw the day-to-day operations. I've been doing the budget for about the last 6 years, including writing the narrative. I'm still doing capital planning, approving spending. I've overseen a few internal affairs investigations. I don't want to make it sound like we have a lot of them. We don't. I wasn't not taking credit for accreditation or body cameras, but I was certainly involved in those programs. through the approval process and certainly some policy development. The post-certification process, we're in our second year. It's going well, not having any issues with that, and obviously very involved with hiring, staffing, and recruitment. So future vision. I put this slide up because if you have a vision, you need a strategy that you have to execute in order to be successful, right? So without execution, vision is just another word for hallucination. And that came from Mark Hurd, who's best known for being the CEO of Oracle, but I found it interesting and just thought I'd throw it in there.
It's true.
At least give you something to look at other than just me. So, you know, kind of a status report and a future vision combined. What are some of the concerns that we face, the town faces, and what are some of our action items? Traffic, right? We all hear it. I've been hearing it for 30 years. We're concerned about traffic. As you probably know, we had a traffic officer's position that we had to put back into patrol. We're short-staffed. We had vacancies. It took a long time to fill. We had people in the academy. We actually, the 3 opera positions that were approved, a year and a half, 2 years ago, they're actually just on the road now. So it takes time. Love to reinstitute the traffic program, but I want to make everyone, including our citizens, understand that every patrol officer is assigned traffic duties. They're given traffic assignments. They all write tickets. We write a couple thousand of them a year. So it's a concern, and that we try to address it all the time. Senior needs, I know the town did a senior needs assessment. Haven't read it front to back, but I have read some of it. I don't think there's a lot of it that's for the police department to address. I'm curious to see where the town goes with their plan moving forward, but the seniors are always a responsibility to us. I actually presented to them this morning. I was the first new chief, breakfast. So I think it's important to connect with them, all the time. We do have Officer Sabati as our liaison. I'd love to give him more time to do outreach with them. It's certainly a vulnerable population that needs support. Yes, there are drugs in town. We do have an officer assigned to the DEA task force. It really is a benefit to us. Some people ask, well, why are you taking an officer from Westborough and he's doing cases in other towns? Well, drugs aren't just a Westborough problem, it's a regional problem. And when we have an investigation in Westborough, we're able to bring federal assets to bear on our investigation, which is just huge. It's been very beneficial for us for years. Human trafficking, it is a problem. I know it's an ugly one, but we have a lot of hotels in town. We have done stings in the past that are difficult for us to do on our own without assistance. I'd love to have a human trafficking task force position. They run a task force, I believe, out of Worcester and another one out of Boston. With all the hotels we have in town, it would be, again, you're bringing federal assets to bear on a local problem, but it's really a regional problem. Those problems don't just stay in Westborough, they travel throughout our communities regionally. Child safety, I assume, is a concern to everybody. We also have a Detective O'Brien, who works with the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. She's done some successful cases in Westborough. It's unfortunately, that we have to have those cases, but it's important that we handle them properly. And again, the more time we can spend doing work like that, the better. But it all goes back to staffing and where we can place our people. I know there's been a lot of talk about hotels and sheltering. We just had a pretty significant case out of one of our hotels. I assume you've read about it. That actually wasn't a person that was there sheltering, but the hotels are a big draw on our department. We went from a few calls a year to hundreds of calls a year, and it runs the gamut I don't need to get into specifics. Some of it's part of the sheltering program and some of it isn't. Working with one of my sergeants, Sergeant Shipperets, put together a bunch of information, breaking down, you know, what the calls were and everything else. And I'm going to work with Christie on trying to address some of those issues. But we're there all the time. We do the best we can. Crime victimization is certainly a concern of mine, and I think a lot of it comes to awareness. I'm going to be asking my community engagement team to come up with a home safety campaign on how people can safeguard themselves and their property, their houses, their cars. You may not know, but they were at the Westborough Connects event on Sunday with pamphlets on scams and frauds. And you know, as much as we can do that outreach as possible is what we're going to do. I still talk to people today that don't lock their doors. They don't lock the doors of their cars. They leave valuables on their front seat. We recently had a rash of breaks at some of our sports clubs. You know, people go in to go to the gym, they come out, their window smashed, their valuables have gone out of their car. It's kind of cyclical. It goes around, you know, regionally, and we've seen it a little bit in the past, but I think a lot of it's awareness. I talk about the crime triangle to people. There's motive, means, and opportunity. We can't necessarily address your motive or your means, but if we can remove the opportunity, then the best thing we can hope for, you know, as a police department, is that people don't become victims. It's the, if we were perfect, there wouldn't be any crime in Westborough, but that's obviously not going to happen. So supervisor coverage is another issue. We are a very young department. We have 4 officers on the road right now that just graduated from the police academy. We have a number of other officers that are still on probation. We have 5 patrol supervisors. They have a right to take time off. So when you have shifts uncovered, we try to fill them. We actually, in the last year, we filled about 900 hours of supervisor shift overtime, which isn't cheap. But when you talk about liability and a lack of coverage, you talk about federal liability. You know, I've spoken a lot about liability at the federal level in law enforcement, you know, Title 42, U.S. Code 1983. That's where municipalities get sued when their employees acting under the color of law, which law enforcement, do something wrong. And the 3 main areas are training, supervision, and policies. We're accredited. We're doing a great job on the policies. We're doing a great job on training. We can always do better. The supervisor issue needs to get addressed. And there's a couple of ways we can do that. Not to get into details, it's a little premature, but there's a couple different rank structures or shift changes or things that we could do to try to address some of that I've spoken to some of my command staff with. Station coverage, as you know, we don't have dispatchers. There's nobody in our lobby 24/7. I don't think it's the level of support or support that we should be giving our community. When someone walks into the lobby and there's nobody there, they have to pick up a phone. I don't really think in Westborough that that's what they're expecting. We do staff the lobby when we have the people available, but if they have to go on a call, they have to go on a call. It's just the nature of business. And the last, I think, part of my vision was to talk about this. I don't know if you've seen it in my budget document. I kind of throw it at the end every year because I've been talking about this for about 5 years. I would love to build a state-of-the-art training facility for our police department. This picture is the right-hand bottom part of it is the DPW, where our current firearms range is. We basically shoot into a pile of dirt, which it serves a purpose. Our instructors are great. I did it for a long time. We get creative, but really to train today's standards, and again, I go back to training as a liability, we should be doing more. Should be more judgmental training, should be more use of force, decision training. There should be shoot, don't shoot training. I'm not going to tell you it would be cheap, but you asked me to present, so That's what I'm giving you. The last 2 months, since I've been interim chief, we've put 5 new officers on. They've completed their field training. We did department-wide leadership training that I think you've been made aware of, sponsored by the Westborough Police Foundation. I hope to do that every year. I think leadership training is important at all levels, not just when you get promoted or upper levels. Every police officer on the street is seen as a leader to our department, and I think it's imperative that we build that from the ground up. As you know, we started a recruitment team. I think you've seen the brochure. We're actually working with Westborough TV to do a video. They did an outstanding job on the Economic Development Committee video, and I was just like, wow, if we could do that, it would be, that'd be great. So we instituted, I know you probably don't remember it, but the budget summit, I talked about the professional development points policy we were implementing. We started that in July, and basically what we're doing is we all have our mandatory training that we have to do for post-certification, and then we're going to require everyone to get 2 PDPs throughout the year to make sure that everybody is getting additional training across the board, not just certain people doing it and certain people aren't. We're also doing a roll call training video. It's once a month. They're short videos, but they're relevant. Every officer has gone through the active shooter hostile event response training online through Texas State University. ASHA is the new statewide standard. It was implemented by the Secretary of Public Safety. It works with all aspects of public safety, police, fire, EMS. We're working on developing our new standard operating procedure and hoping to plan a scenario-based event very soon. And I'm also very happy to report I asked Detective Lieutenant Tompkins to develop a new post-overdose response team, and we're going to be working with Spectrum Health Alliance. So basically what that is, there's a website that we also report on, but we can see other people that have been reported, and we locate people that have overdosed, they've been released from the hospital. If they're not currently in a program or in some type of recovery, within 24 to 72 hours, the standard is to kind of do a knock and talk. So we'll have a plainclothes officer respond with a peer-to-peer counselor from Spectrum and see if we can give them some guidance. Spectrum has been, from what I've been told, super excited about the program. They're guaranteeing us space in their facility. I really think it could be a model that could be replicated. And yes, we have a town meeting warrant article on in conjunction with the fire department. We've both hired more personnel. We've no longer have spare radios, our portable radios. The batteries are 7 years old. They're failing to hold charges. So that's really the crux of that. So to kind of wrap it up, my second guiding principle is procedural justice. And I think it was probably around 2015 when President Barack Obama's task force report on 21st century policing came out. I was reading through that, and there's 6 pillars. The first pillar is building trust and legitimacy. And what that basically means is when people perceive the police are being effective and fair, they start to confer legitimacy onto the police actions. You couple that with the morality of a person. Obviously, hopefully they have a sense of right and wrong. There's a little bit of influence on the perceived risk of sanctions, like what's the penalty if I don't going to comply, but really what it comes down to, if a person understands right and wrong and they believe they're being treated fairly and justly, and the police are legitimate, they have a willingness to comply. And I think it's like, it goes back to the very basics of what we do. And the reason I wanted to tie it back to the first slide is because the ability of the police to perform their duties is dependent upon public approval of police existence, actions, behavior, and the ability of the police to secure and maintain public trust. That came from Sir Robert Peel. So back in 1829, he was talking about procedural justice. So I think it's interesting to me how we kind of come full circle, that in 2015, we felt we needed to readdress that. Good night.
Thank you very much. And with that, we do have a few questions. Let me say, if you would prefer to sit
Yeah.
for the questions, we won't make it.
I think I prefer to stand, thank you.
All right. And we'll start over here.
Okay, yeah, I have the first question. So just so the public is aware, and Chief, that you're aware, we have been pre-assigned the questions we're asking. They're not necessarily questions we posed, so we're just going to kind of flow along here. And so if the board is okay, you have the question, I'm going to read the question and give the chief an opportunity to ask, but I think it's been asked and answered, but I'm going to ask the question. You okay with that?
Gotcha.
All right. So the first question is, what are the biggest challenges, we asked for 2 or 3 police departments in Massachusetts are facing today or in the near future? Are these current challenges for Westborough Police Department today, and what are your thoughts on how to address them? You gave a great slide on the challenges. Is there anything else you want to elaborate on that you haven't already spoken to?
I mean, policing in general, I think we've come a long way, at least in Massachusetts, with some of the police reform legislation. I don't know that I can really elaborate more on the issues we're facing here in Westborough. We do, I believe, practice procedural justice. We have a policy on bias-free policing. The officers go through annual training on that. They get reissued the policy. We actually do a report on that. We're required through accreditation to run kind of our stats and see where those numbers fall. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, there is no bias-based policing taking place in our community. I can't speak for other communities, but I feel confident that our officers do an outstanding job.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yep. Todd, if you had to identify 3 of the most valuable skills, characteristics, or attributes that are necessary for a police chief, what are they and why?
Skills and attributes.
Skills, characteristics, or attributes?
Yeah, I mean, leadership and management skills, because they're 2 separate things, and I can talk about that a lot, but, and vision, you know, a good leader doesn't have to come up with all the great answers. He has to build a team that's going to come up with the great answers. And I think I've come up with some great answers through my career, but I'm not going to have them all. Leadership and management are 2 different theories. You lead people, you manage things, and as a police chief, you need to be able to do both effectively.
Thank you.
Okay, you covered this in your presentation, so how do you prioritize the training needs of the department? How would you ensure that all members of the department are adequately trained? Is there anything you would add to what was in your presentation?
Yeah, so obviously the priority is what's required to keep our post certification. We have a lot of specialty programs that, you know, I give Chief Laurie credit for starting a lot of those. They require a lot of additional training, some of them, especially our crime scene unit people. And so obviously if we determine that we need to add people or we want to create a new unit, we need to make sure that they're properly trained for that. One of the biggest issues for me is supervisor training. We started sending everyone to Roger Williams University when they become a supervisor. We also started kind of a field training officer program for our supervisors, which I don't think anybody else does, where they shadow another supervisor when they first get promoted, so they have a bit more experience understanding what the responsibilities are, rather than, hey, today you're a patrolman, tomorrow you're a sergeant or you're a lieutenant or whatever, like, go do your job. So other than that, we try to instill in our people, if there's areas that interest them, We want to hear about it. Training is a great tool to keep people motivated and engaged in what they're doing and make them excited to come to work. So if we had an officer that felt like, he really wanted to do, a drug interdiction, we could send him to a patrol officer's class for drug interdiction. So, it's something that I task my supervisors with doing, to follow their people and have conversations with them to see what the best training needs are going to be.
Thank you.
Next one, police departments are finding it difficult to attract qualified applicants for police officer positions. Discuss your philosophy and techniques relating to recruitment, retention, and promotion of law enforcement personnel, and how do you ensure that your hiring process is inclusive and attracts a diverse range of candidates that are reflective of the community?
Well, that's why we started the recruitment team, in a nutshell. That's why we started making a brochure. That's why we want to build out a video. They've already reached out to universities and colleges and academies. Retention is about keeping your employees happy and motivated, and that's, I talk about training opportunities and specialty assignments. There's not a lot of departments our size that do those things. They have to feel like they have a future. They have to feel like there's something down the road for them in a promotion or a position. They have to feel appreciated and respected. And, when I talk about procedural justice, that has to start internally. So we have to have procedural justice internally if I expect my staff to do it as well. But recruitment is difficult. There's no doubt about it. I can go to chiefs conferences or whatever it is, and there can be 300 chiefs in the room, and they all say the same thing. We're not getting any applications. We're starting a hiring process right now. And, believe it or not, I'm incredibly thankful that we have 3 lateral people that have applied to us. So they're already trained, they don't need to go to the academy, and in today's world, at least around this part of the state, that's a lot of people. I've talked to departments that put out a job notice and get nobody. And to follow up on another part of it, I can't control who applies. Diversity is important to us. We try to do that as best we can, but the goal is to hire the best person for our department and our community.
Thank you.
First, I'll just say thank you, Chief, for your willingness to serve as the next police chief. I appreciate your patience, attendance at our meetings, and your presentation sharing with the community who you are and what your vision is. I certainly respect you, your near 30 years of service to the town, and dedication to policing. I've also stated several times that I find you to be a very strong candidate. However, since this is my only opportunity to question any candidate, I submitted questions that I hope you see as being fair but pointed. So my question to you is, or the board's question to you is, in the 2018 Police Department staffing study, it was indicated that there were 31 full-time police officers in the department, and that the department was primarily in reaction mode. There are now currently 40 sworn officers. This is a 29% increase in staffing in 5 years, which is likely unsustainable. The study also indicated that New England police departments have an average of 1.9 officers per 1,000 residents. The town is currently just under 22,000 residents. That is a ratio that translates to a need of 42 total badged officers. Do you think this is still a correct number to provide a more proactive force for the next, call it 5 years, leveling off call volumes, providing outreach, and fully staffing our front desk as you indicated?
Great question. That study looked at patrol level staffing only. It didn't look at detectives. It didn't look at command staff. As you know, we added a lieutenant, we added a deputy chief. It was strictly just patrol level. And one of the things it talked about was allocation of work hours. And one of the things I just recently instituted was tracking our hours that we spend doing reports, because we never tracked it before. And it's a huge part of what we do, and it wasn't being looked at, it wasn't being tracked. You go on a call, you clear the call in 15 minutes, if you research the records management system, it shows that OUI call took up 15 minutes of time. It's just not accurate. So we instituted a new program where we're tracking report hours. I want to give it some time so we can have enough data to be statistically significant so that we can try to figure out how much time is on patrol, how much time is spent writing reports, how much time is for proactive work. And then we talk about specialty assignments. I talked about the drug task force officer, a human trafficking position. Those were outside the scope of that study. So we've made great advancements in our staffing, but we also have to recognize we went decades without making any advancements. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's helpful, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm up, sorry. Making my notes here. With examples, please, an example or two would be great. Share how you would handle resistance to change, both internally and externally, or past experience is fine as well.
Yeah, resistance to change. I mean, anyone in our profession, we joke about it, that you try to implement something new and it's painful sometimes. I mean, one of the best examples I'll give you is I talked about the scheduling system, right? Everything was on paper and pencil, the schedules hung on the bulletin board, and, I come up with this great program that we're gonna be innovative and you can track everything on your phone, and everyone hated it. They were like, what? We can't, what are you talking about? Within a month, calm down. If you have questions, we'll work through it. And there were questions and there were issues, legitimate ones, and we figured it out together. We worked together to figure out the issues, and we came up with solutions. And I don't know how many members of the department remember the paper schedule anymore. There's probably only a couple of us, but it became like, wow, that's the greatest thing in the world. Like, thank God we have that,
Can you, just as a follow-on, can you think of sort of external, any sort of external resistance that you have experienced and how you would, how you did handle that? It's hard to predict how you would handle something in the future, so.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of, like, external resistance to the police department?
Yeah, or situation or change that was implemented. And if you can, it's okay.
I mean, I think, post was a big impact. Police reform legislation was, had a big impact on people. A lot of people were nervous about it. I think as a leader, what you have to do is just work through the concerns and communicate with them, and just assure people that everyone's going to be okay. We're going to get through it together.
Thank you.
So Todd, I think this first one you already hit on, so I won't ask you unless you want to add to it, but his question was, please describe your leadership style. I think you handled that through your discussion. But maybe take it to the next step of how your style might influence changes in the current structure and or philosophy of the Westborough Police Department.
Yeah, well, actually, what I believe my leadership style is what's called a servant leader. I believe that, my responsibility and my job is to serve my people and my organization so that they can better serve our community. It's not about what's beneficial to me or what I'm getting out of the position. It's added responsibility and it's added work. What was the second part? How
that style might influence any changes in the current structure or philosophy of the Westborough Police.
I guess I hope that the people that work under me see the style that I present and emulate that, and we move forward as a group. I think that's, I know succession planning has been an issue, but it's also something I believe in. But everyone has different management styles. I think it's just, whatever you call it, I think it's important to understand as a leader, your job is to, lead your people. It's not about you getting some type of benefit out of it.
Thank you.
Can you provide an example in which you encountered a sensitive or volatile situation that required careful analysis and communication on your part, and how your role impacted that situation?
Sensitive or volatile situation. I mean, look, we deal with a lot of sensitive investigations. I won't get into specifics about them, but we deal with a lot of tragic situations. Obviously, there are things that have to be handled. But we had an officer-involved shooting, right? It wasn't that long ago. I was one of the first people on the scene. I took leadership of that. I made sure that everything that had to be done was being done. I made sure that the officer was taken care of. I made sure that all the responsibilities for that scene were being taken care of. We deal with, at my level, I've dealt with a lot of sensitive internal affairs investigations where you have personnel policy issues and disclosure issues. So we deal with a lot of sensitive investigations, and I'm not really sure what to add to that.
Okay, thank you.
In your opinion, an ideal and effective working relationship between the police chief, select board, and town manager requires what?
Communication. Cooperation, communication, understanding of really townwide issues, not just the issues in your own department. I've always said that as the leader of, whatever department you're heading, as a department head for the police department, my responsibility is to advocate for the police department. But that doesn't mean it's at the expense of everyone else. It means that you have to work together as a team, collaboratively, and have those, higher level discussions about how things are going to get accomplished.
Thank you.
How would you describe your communication and conflict resolution style? How would you handle a conflict with a local business, with the select board, or with the public?
My style, I guess I go back, again, procedural justice, like treating people fairly, understanding the circumstances, giving people a voice and a chance to talk. Whoever it is, whether it's a business or the select board or whoever it is, I think it's just having an understanding that, sometimes you disagree, but listening to the other side, giving people a chance. It's really about where I'd leave it.
Oh, yes. With the regional dispatch center moving forward, what, if any, issues are the department contemplating, and how are you looking to address them?
I'll be honest with you, I kind of look at it as we have it already. I know they're just here in Westborough, and but they're not embedded in the police department. They're separate from us. A lot of parts of the country have regional dispatch centers that are very successful. Again, it'd be one of those things where, there might be a bit of a learning curve and a bit of change for people to get used to. But if the center's still going to be in Westborough, so whether it's in the fire department or if it's out on Smith Valve or I don't really see it having a big impact on the operations of the police department.
What role do you see the police department playing in the school system? If you can, provide examples of concern and/or opportunities that you intend to focus on.
Well, I don't know that our role is going to change much from where it is. I've had discussions with Amber. I've met with her. She had some concerns about communication. We've talked through that. We've communicated with her recently about a couple issues. She actually, notified me that she was very happy with the communication she received from us and that she was excited to move forward and work together. We're obviously going to support the school department in any way we can. We certainly have no intention of stopping the school resource officer position. I think it's been successful. Detective Dappolite is very much ingrained in the schools and does a great job. I've recently just met with Amber as part of our accreditation process. We have to meet annually and review the MOU and discuss his performance. She didn't have any issues with his performance. The school department just actually signed the MOU, I think a week or two ago. I just got it back the other day. So.
Thank you.
So Todd, please describe any experience you have had working in a real incident or practical training that utilized unified command. In your experience, was there any lesson learned or takeaways that would change your approach at the next opportunity?
Unified command, the incident command system obviously is important. It's been around a long time. Any major incident we have, it's generally used in the fire department and the police department. Large fires, we've been involved with it when we opened an emergency communication center at the fire department, whether it was a hurricane or a blizzard. We utilized it somewhat at the 300th anniversary parade. I think lessons learned are, for me, I don't know how, that it's a training issue for us at this point. We've had such a turnover. It's another issue that I think we need to address moving forward as far as being able to fill the roles required to run an emergency operations center. You can't just throw people at it. They have to have some knowledge of what their roles and responsibilities are. We've lost some people over the past 7 or 8 years. We can get into a whole nother discussion about institutional knowledge and everything else, but I don't particularly have any lessons learned from particular incidents that I can recall. It's just the fire department's better at it than the police department is. They use it pretty much for every call they go on. But for us, I think it would be more of we need more exposure to it, to be honest with you.
Thank you.
The increased demand and limited supply for mental health services is nationally placing increased burden and challenges on police officers responding to calls. The Westborough Police Department has a strong working relationship with the Westborough Fire Department for EMS support and mental health clinician riding along in a co-response model. What needs and/or opportunities do you see for expanding co-response and/or alternative response services to ensure safe, effective outcomes for all involved?
So just to let you know, unfortunately, we still don't have a full-time clinician. I've been working with the advocates through that issue for months now. It's very frustrating. I've talked to Joanne Barros from DMH about an alternate organization to provide that service. I'm going to be looking into that. That was a regional program, and about 2 years ago, we would have monthly meetings, and I'd see the call volume in Northborough, Southborough, and Westborough, and we were always way ahead of the other two communities. So I kind of lobbied DMH to allow me to write the grant as a single community, and she agreed. So that's, kind of where I saw the need to increase that. I would love to have a clinician 24/7. I don't know that DMH would support that grant based on a need. Even if we just had one days in 4 to 12s, it would be outstanding. The problem is we can't fill the vacant position we have. I applaud the men and women of the department that accepted that program wholeheartedly in the very beginning. You know, when we talk about change and, you know, what they're going to do, I was kind of cringing when I introduced our first clinician. I was like, oof, how is this going to go? And, you know, they've embraced that program wholeheartedly, and it's been a tremendous asset to us. So my goal right now is to just get our full-time position filled, and, you know, we'll move on from there.
Thank you.
The Westborough Police Department was the first department in Massachusetts to achieve accreditation under Post Version 6. What are the most important changes made by the department as a result of this accreditation? What do you see as the current and potential challenges to operating under and maintaining this accreditation, and what steps do you anticipate will be necessary going forward related to accreditation? So that was a lot. I can remind you of pieces.
Changes were more just, you know, policy-driven. We have to do certain procedures on a regular basis to maintain the policy, and, like, you know, doing cell inspections or doing building checks or cruiser checks, or, you know, there were a lot of procedural things that we had to implement in order to meet the standards. I don't know what the second part of it was.
Oh, I think, are there potential challenges, I think, to maintaining accreditation?
Definitely an increased workload. You know, there's again, to maintain the status, to meeting all the standards, it's constant work. You know, I spoke about the standard of meeting with Amber and going over the MOU, and it's a constant, it's almost a daily process where you have to, you know, check a box, but in order to check that box, you have to do work. And the accreditation manager was Lieutenant Daniels. I don't know if you're aware, but he's not here anymore. Sergeant Shipwright worked very closely with him. He does an outstanding job kind of filling those gaps, but that could literally be a full-time job. We're in a really good place right now because we were just accredited, but to maintain that it's something you have to work on continually. It's not, okay, well, we did it, we'll see you in 2 years and we'll just get accredited again. It's a constant process.
Thank you.
Fair or not, police departments nationwide suffer the perception of a good old boy club. How will you work to ensure a balance of camaraderie, accountability, transparency, and effectiveness in alignment with post standards and the expectations of the town?
You know, I would say it's about the culture of the department, and the culture of the department right now is, you know, they do an outstanding job. I talked about bias-based policing earlier. I talked about procedural justice. You know, those are policies that we follow. There are things that are checked on. There are supervisors that maintain their staff and make sure they're doing the right thing. And it's about, you know, building a culture where improper police action's just not acceptable. And, you know, almost every day we hear from citizens in our community, you know, about an officer that did a great job, or they send a thank you card, or they, you know, are very appreciative of how a difficult call was handled. I don't get complaints every day. The officers are very friendly, they're very professional, they've been trained well. We make sure they follow our policies, we make sure they're trained on our policies, and they get additional training to make sure they understand, you know, things about, you know, duty to intervene and all that stuff. And that, you know, it's about a culture in the workplace where things are acceptable or they're not. And improper police work is not acceptable in Westborough.
What would you do as police chief to ensure officers under your leadership maintain the highest ethical standards both on and off duty? And how does post interact here if it does?
Well, again, I think what I would do is it's about culture. Again, I think in some ways those are kind of similar questions.
Yes, they are.
You have to make sure that we have the proper policies, which we have. You have to make sure they're trained on them, and we have to make sure they're held accountable. Misconduct's not accepted. It's investigated. I've done internal affairs investigations for a long time. I can tell you that it's not a fun part of the job, but it's an important part of the job, because really the employees want accountability. They thrive on it. They don't want to be like, there's no supervision, everyone just goes out and does what they want, because you have the employees that always go out and do the right thing, and they're looking at the other people that aren't doing the right thing, and they're saying, well, you know, where's the accountability? And accountability builds a proper culture, and, you know, it's important to maintain that, and it's from the top down and the bottom up.
Tuck, you provide examples of your ability to work with the public, other department leaders, kind of already did this again, but, and local officials like the select board to address community issues. And what would your approach be to further foster cooperation among key stakeholders?
So what's my approach to do that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, your ability, examples of your ability to work.
To work collaboratively,
Yeah.
I mean, I like to think I've been doing that throughout my career. In the past couple of months, I've been meeting with organizations and certainly doing town meetings, you know, with the staff of different department heads. I was at the Civic Club meeting last Tuesday, go to town events, talk to people. You know, if we're going to work together to solve problems, you know, you have to do it collaboratively. And it goes back to, you know, like I talked about before, is giving people a voice, understanding different points of view. You know, my perspective on something is probably not going to be the same as yours or somebody else's, but, you know, it's about understanding what the issue is and just trying to work collaboratively to get to a solution.
Thank you.
So the Westborough Police Department has taken concrete steps and actions to improve community relations, avoid explicit and implicit bias, and to ensure de-escalation as part of incident responses whenever possible. How do you see these efforts continuing and advancing in the future?
Well, they're certainly going to continue because, you know, those are policy-based issues. With post-reform, you know, there are reporting requirements for misconduct. That's not going away. Our policies are in place. They're going to be enforced. They're going to be followed. We're going to continue to train at the proper level and the proper standards. It's hard to say where we'd go from there. I mean, I just think it's important to continue with, you know, the proper training and to continue to build the proper culture and, you know, to discuss things like, you know, bias-based policing is not acceptable and procedural justice is the way we operate, and, you know, we're certainly not going to go backwards.
Okay, thank you.
While the current look of our police cruisers are cool and sleek, they serve as a multi-purpose vehicles not only representing the community but also as a deterrence and as a safety vehicle. In my time on the board, I have heard concerns from residents about the visibility of police cruisers. Will you continue the philosophy of the previous chief of less visible ghost graphics, or will you adopt a more visible policy when purchasing new cruisers for more effective deterrence and safety? So, for example, a young woman on the side of the road on a pitch black night can more easily identify police cruisers if needed.
I'll be honest with you, Selectman Welch, I haven't even thought about that. They're actually not ghost graphics, but they are very reflective at night, but it's not something that's been on the forefront of my mind at this point.
Staying on the police cruiser topic, you mentioned in a recent interview with the Community Advocate that you like to think of yourself as progressive. Right or wrong, the Blue Line flag is seen as a political statement by some residents in town. Knowing that this board has adopted a very narrow approach to flags on town property, will you continue to allow the placement of the Blue Line flag on cruisers? And if so, will you then allow, if requested, other politically charged flags such as the Pride flag to be added? Or would you look to the Select Board for a policy update for consistency across all town property?
Yeah, a consistent policy would be outstanding. I understand there's a certain part of our population that's concerned about the thin blue line emblem. You know, it's certainly a conversation to be had about whether it should be on the cruiser or not. I don't own the cars, the town owns the cars. But
Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to read the question because we may have already answered it, so give me a moment. I feel like the last one, I'm going to read it, but we don't need you to answer it, but just because we've done this, so, because I think you've asked and answered several times. So it is, how will you promote police and community relationships? What is your philosophy or strategy on the chief and the entire department being more present, not only at regular events, but also directly within neighborhoods? And share an example of a program you initiated or would like to initiate that would foster this relationship. So I'm seeing from the board that everyone has heard. Are you okay with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
We're good?
Feel free to answer, but you don't have
Yeah.
to. Thank you for giving us a lot of examples.
Silence is okay. All right. Okay.
We
That was
ha-
question number 22, if anyone was counting.
oh, I thought it was only like 5.
So we just have, I think, a final question, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
But before we ask the final question, I don't know if individuals wanted to ask, take a couple minutes to ask follow-up questions if they had any things that came up that they wanted to get more information on. Good.
I'm good.
I'm feeling we've been pretty exhaustive,
Yes.
if not exhausting.
No? Anybody else? Everybody?
No, I'll have a closing comment at some point,
Okay.
so,
Okay.
whenever that's appropriate.
All right. So the closing question is, do you have any questions of us?
I'm good. It's the easiest question of the night. Right
I
there.
think everybody appreciates that. All right. Thank you. Final comments?
Sure. Thank you so much for, first of all, your presentation. Having been on the board almost 6 years, I think it is probably one of the best presentations I have received. So thank you for the depth and the breadth and the sincerity that came across in not only in the well-prepared slides. So appreciate that, and I know that from I know the public will feel the same. I want to also recognize your what came across to me, your experience, your candor, your honesty, your creativity, your initiative, and certainly the confidence, not only that you display, but that, sort of I felt from this conversation, and I hope others kind of feel all of this as well. I know it's been an interesting process from where you sit. It sure has been from where I've been sitting and where people in the hinterlands have been sitting with all of their views, which I appreciate that. I know I've been on the receiving side of both, lots of different colors of that feedback. So thank you for your patience during this process. As you know, I was very much in favor of following what the charter said and doing an external process. I think where we landed has been a process that has been a really strong one in sort of as we've kind of brought together the sausage making of what might a promotional process look like for a police chief here in Westborough, and I think we have achieved that. I'm very proud of the work of this board and your collaboration with it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah.
If you'd care to make one, sure.
Sure. I just, Todd, I want to thank you for, first of all, agreeing to step in as chief, with Chief Laura leaving. And you've done it, and from what you showed tonight, I mean, the department hasn't missed a beat and maybe has accelerated with the activities going on. You have stepped in and performed the role of chief, and thank you for that. I echo Shelby's comments with the presentation. This was, I think, really a opportunity for many in town that may know of you but don't know you, as well as some others of us do, but I think they know you better now. They know you better because of your picture in the Community Advocate from the dunk tank. That is part of your community involvement, and I see that. I see that continuing. I think, as I've said in prior meetings, the what I'll call outpouring of support from the whole community and various constituencies in support of you is a testament to what you've done in this town. I think it's also a testament to our entire police force and some of the things you've talked about and how they act and react. So again, thank you for what you've done, and thank you for what I hope that you will be doing and continuing to do. So thank you.
Thank you.
So, to echo, thank you for your patience going through the process. There were certainly times as we were making the sausage up here, looked out, saw you sitting in the gallery, and I'm thinking, what is he thinking? So tells me, hey, I never want to play poker with you.
He doesn't want to tell us what he was thinking.
He doesn't have to. I never want to play poker with you, nothing personal, but you've certainly...
I'm not a very good player.
So,
you might want to rethink that.
But also, one of the things I want to be specifically call out is that in stepping into the interim chief role, it's clear you've seen that not just as a caretaker position, but you mentioned in your presentation new initiatives and continuing on with existing and expanding existing initiatives to continue to move the department forward. And that's very much appreciated. I think a sign of your commitment and not only in the short term, but to the long-term evolution and success of the department. And so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just echo, I think your presentation was one of the best I've seen in my short term and the time on the board, so I really appreciate you putting the time and the work into it. And as I said many times in those various evening discussions, I have never really had an opportunity to meet you and learn. And this is such an important position for the community. I really wanted to hear from you, and I certainly learned a lot about you and learned a lot about your vision, and I'm happy to say that I am eager to see your vision come to fruition, so I appreciate that. I will also say your wife has excellent choice in colors. Looks great. And I really look forward. I don't know what the board's going to vote now, but I look forward to working with you in the future with the board on the challenges and opportunities that the town faces. So thank you very much for stepping up.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, very well done tonight. Well done. I think the last few sessions here reflected, as we tried to figure this out, reflected the importance of this job to the community. That's what we were, why we took so much time with it. And just a tremendous job tonight. And may I reflect my support by saying, can I get a motion?
I will move to appoint Todd Minardi as police chief of the town of Westborough, subject to contract negotiations.
Second.
All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you all.
Take the jacket off.
Thank you all for coming, but you certainly are not expected to stay.
Well, you're welcome to.
Well, wait, they paid for the whole show.
You're ahead of schedule.
God, you never thought that would happen.
Never.
Question.
There you go. Good job.
Same stuff that's in there.
Hello, Chief. How are you?
All right.
He did service for 11.
Take one more minute, no rush.
I screwed up. I showed up
Clear out.
an hour late.
Yeah.
9/11 church.
Not yet. Just like. Everybody's leaving. Ian's wife isn't even staying.
Maureen's even leaving.
Yeah.
She's out of here.
Now I feel kind of like that should have been the last item. You know?
No, right?
Anticlimactic. Yeah.
TVs are turning off all over town.
Do you guys have like a crash test?
Right.
Thank you.
At least have like a crash test dummy they could leave or something, you know?
Not a one.
All right.
Wait, can we just
So-
wait for, or Ian, can you just shut that
I
door?
can shut that right
Yeah.
door.
'Cause
Yeah.
they'll probably celebrate for a little bit, and then rightfully so.
For those
watching us.
watching at home, the audience is now empty. Yeah, which I felt we were pretty confident that that's what was going to happen. So,
That's okay.
but we do have a couple more items. One is talking about youth and family services, the service delivery model.
Feels hard to follow.
I know, right?
So as the board's aware, we have had a vacancy in our Youth and Family Services Director since February of this year. We've also had a posting for a part-time clinician. We've been very lucky to have one of our former clinician or counselors come back and serve in a temporary role, but other than that, I've had a really difficult time filling those positions. We have had some candidates, we've done some interviews, but we just haven't found the right fit, and we've had several folks participate in those. This is not unique, especially in the mental health space, the difficulty of trying to find a clinician. You actually just heard Chief Minardi talking about that, and the difficulty that the advocates even are finding filling that position. So as we've moved through this and recognizing the important service that the Youth and Family Services was providing previously with clinicians, we started kind of looking around at our neighbors to see what other models we might pursue. And so one of those models was to look at the Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services. Though that is called Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services, unlike Westborough, it is not a department of the town. It is actually a nonprofit. They contract with the town of Shrewsbury, their initial client. So that's sort of where their name came from many years ago. They contract with the town of Shrewsbury to provide similar services that Westborough Youth and Family Services provides, and then they also contract with several school districts in the area to provide, different group work and clinical services. So we have met with them. We actually we've met with them with the superintendent. We also brought Chief Minardi with us. Select Board member Edinburgh came to one of the meetings to just really start to understand the services that they provide and how they might support Westborough in the future. So in working with them, we feel that we're at a point where we want to start talking to you and to the community about pursuing a contract with Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services just for the clinical services that Westborough Youth and Family Services provides. I think that's really important. That's a little bit different model than Shrewsbury currently has, where they provide all of the services. This would be a contract for just clinical work, and all of the work that we do with outreach and things that are, not required under a license, all the work we do with our Human Service Alliance and all the different nonprofits, we would retain an employee to do that outreach work. And so it's a model that I also have talked to the employees in the department about, as well as the chair of the Youth Commission, who is supportive, at least supportive of the conversation. She herself works in that field, and so she had a good conversation. I haven't been able to talk to her about the details of that, but a good conversation with the clinical director at Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services. And so we did present this in this more general way to the Youth Commission last night. And I think, and Sean was there as a liaison to the Youth Commission. I think we got some really positive feedback from both the students as well as the adult members. And so we're at a point now where we would like to move forward with really ironing out the full scope and structure of how that would work, in order to get, to make sure that that whatever we land on works for Westborough and works for that organization, but also to get the price. In looking at the current cost related to Shrewsbury, it seems like something that we could absorb in our budget. Another potential funding source could be the ARPA funds that we've already allocated. So, something to sort of think about is that we have the ARPA funds we've allocated to 2 different potential youth and family services initiatives, which may or may not cover the cost once we get that number. The alternative would be a town meeting article to move money from salary and wages to expenses so we could fund the contract. I recognize that this is, again, similar to the conversation we had earlier about the community center. We're about a month away from town meeting, and so we would want to do a lot of discussion about this leading up to town meeting. The challenge is that if we move forward with moving the money from salary and wages to expenses, obviously we can only do that at town meeting. So if we don't do that in October, we would have to wait until March. And I think that we have heard from many in the community the need for us to really be meeting this need. I look forward to sort of ironing out those details so I can give you something, more detailed and more complete in terms of what we're looking to do. But just wanted to introduce the concept generally to the board and to the public, and get thoughts and feedback on it as we start to really solidify what this might look like. I actually will say, because it was a question that came up last night, we are continuing, we have continued to post for the vacancies. So those are still posted on our website, and we're kind of pursuing these things in parallel. But if we were to move forward with a contract, it would be a minimum of a 3-year contract, understanding that the organization would have to hire additional clinicians to support Westborough's needs, and then they would have a client caseload that we certainly wouldn't want to disrupt, with sort of fluid movement on who the clinician is. Also very important is that though they are called Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services, there is discussion around changing their name, but for us, it's Westborough Youth and Family Services who contracts with this other organization. All of the clinical work would still take place in Westborough, in the current, municipal building, so that our residents would be accessing services in our town.
I think one of the interesting aspects about the relationship, particularly with its focus on the clinical services, is that Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services as an organization is large enough that they have a critical mass, that they are actually a training and mentoring location for people who've gotten their degrees and are going through the practicum, and sort of it's most similar to an apprenticeship period where they're highly supervised to go on for the full licensing and certification. And so one of the things that came up in the discussion is that they have folks who they've helped trained, who are now licensed and can work independently. They don't have a place for them, so they end up going up and working someplace else. And so I think this arrangement, because they have a pipeline of new talent and incoming talent, will make it easier to fill the positions and provide the service to Westborough on an ongoing basis, and have a greater breadth of resources and experience and peers that the counselors can leverage for specific cases or specific situations, and a broad supervisory structure that I think will enable a deeper, broader continuum of care, and really enhance the quality of the service that we currently provide. I think there's some opportunities to even move it forward. So I see this as a good direction to head in.
Yeah, and I would mention that because this organization contracts beyond Shrewsbury, they've picked up other schools and things. They market their services. You can go to their website and see the breadth and depth of what they offer. We are not contracting them, or we would not be contracting them for all those services, but just to give you a good idea of what their capabilities are for the citizens of this town who want to educate themselves about Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services. I would recommend going out and doing that.
You probably won't be surprised to hear this from me, but I think this is a great idea. I love the fact that we're, as I call it, kind of thinking innovatively or a little bit outside the box. I mean, it's been tough, and it's tough when you have a department and positions and kind of here at home, but like we've done in other things in terms of, call it regionalization, this is a little bit different than that, but similar, and I think it's, I am fully supportive of continuing down this path and seeing what it is. I do like the idea as you have proposed it, of kind of a little bit of a bifurcation, I guess I'll call it that, with the clinicians being there, but also having the other piece of the department still being residing here and the role here. So I am 100% supportive of it. I think it's a great idea. I think it's whenever and wherever we should be looking at this stuff. It doesn't work everywhere, but I think it's where we should be doing stuff. So I personally, I love the fact that you're bringing to us. Hopefully the community does too, but again, if it's the right fit, and I think that's, so I am fully supportive of kind of taking those next steps.
Yeah, so I'm also supportive of continuing the discussion. Certainly want to learn more about their organization, and Sean, appreciate that suggestion of going to their website to do that. I haven't done that yet. I think that my concern right at the moment would be just how quickly can we get this done and do it right. And so I guess I would, obviously you had more conversations and there's more depth than, I'm assuming that, kind of that you're sharing here, in the sense, some other details that are relevant. But I guess I would suggest if it's possible, even to kind of, even in advance of town meeting, or in preparation of town meeting, even if it's like a step forward, maybe it's not the whole vision contractual relationship, but to, I guess, if there's clearly an immediate need for clinical support. And so I guess I'm just thinking that if there's a need that can be fulfilled by taking sort of not a baby step, but like an interim step before maybe it's a multiple clinicians or a broader kind of program to alleviate that kind of pinch point, so to speak, right now, I would encourage you to, look at that.
Yeah, so I appreciate that it feels quick. we've been having these conversations for several months.
Sure, yeah.
And one of our initial thoughts was, can we kind of try it out? And so, and I think that's not exactly what you said, but I think what we heard from Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services was what I had mentioned earlier, is that they, and what Alan mentioned, is that they would need to hire additional staff. So actually, this more sort of hybrid model where the town retains an employee who maintains the outreach and the collaboration that we currently have is sort of that half step. And I'm not saying because the goal is to be different, but that's where we tried to say, where's our comfort level here? And our comfort level was to make sure that we were retaining that outreach, that support, that community involvement, and having that sort of control of having that be our own employee, but really just contracting out the clinical services. So I do think there's a lot more to talk about. We need to give the board and give visibility to the community in terms of exactly what that looks like on paper. I think that they would be willing to come in and meet the board, which I think would really give the community some comfort, because I think that as folks have met with them and talked to them, they've felt that comfort. So I appreciate any ideas in addition to that, either tonight or, in the future.
Yeah. I guess one thing I would ask for town staff that stays in place physically, but the role is more formalized as outreach, that I wonder how much of a change in role, or is it time to step back and look at that job description and rating so that it reflects the outreach nature?
Yeah.
And maybe, since I assume Shrewsbury and Family Services would be managing the scheduling of the clinical staff,
Right.
that maybe less administrative work.
Yeah.
And update that classification and job description to reflect what we want out of that, outreach casework type of position that we have.
Yeah, I would say that delineation of responsibility and sort of the administrative piece that Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services already has, it's like teasing apart. That is really the last part of the scope that we're trying to work out, so that we're making sure that we do exactly what you're saying. So, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead, sorry.
I would just say, I think if we talk the details too much here, somebody's going to have to recuse themselves. So, so maybe we save that for next meeting. But any following questions, I don't want to end discussion, but I think
I appreciate
getting in a delicate.
Yeah, I did have a question. Give me a second. You threw me off, Sean. Yeah, so I think bringing them before the board, that would be, and obviously for the public to hear that, I think is really helpful. I mean, I have lots of questions around, like, how do you ensure, HIPAA confidentiality, external audience, all of that. So I'm sure that's all just part of their standard presentation. I am a little confused. Ian said something that I thought I heard differently from you, Christy. So kind of community outreach, coordination, all of that here, person, town employee, got it. But I heard you say the clinical folks would actually be here, so Westborough residents, if they chose to meet in person, wouldn't be traveling to Shrewsbury.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, I thought I heard you saying, like, they were not here, so.
No, I call it regionalization, but I guess I liken it to what we're doing, like veteran services, where they have office hours in the communities. This is actually different than that,
We
in
would
the
have
sense that we would have
dedicated
dedicated
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted, and they
clinicians
would be
here.
here.
They would be
Yes.
here,
Yep.
yeah.
Understand. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, lots more questions, but happy to have this come before us, and I would love to see if we can get this done in time for town meeting in a way that
Yeah.
gets the support that it needs because of the work that is so critical.
Yep.
And there was no motion required here today. Does anybody have any
No,
final
this is just
comments? We're good?
introduction.
Okay.
Actually, I just have one. I mean, you hit on this, but I think so there's two things. I mean, I think we should explore further the concept of potentially on the ARPA funds too, because that is, if we still think we want it, but we feel like it's rushed, it could be an opportunity for
More time.
more time by giving us a buffer until Springtown meeting or next year's budget, whatever. I mean, I still
Right.
think we enter the contract, but similar to what we've done with
Oh, okay.
firefighters, whatever. So I don't think we have to be held to town meeting. I think it's great if we can and we feel ready to go to it, but I also don't think it's like a drop dead and then we don't do anything until March. I think I would continue to
yeah.
explore that
Right.
opportunity on the ARPA.
And that's why I raise it, because I think that we should, it would be good for everyone to give thought to, sort of the benefits of using ARPA and the benefits of the town meeting article. But I do think one of the reasons that we actually even talked about ARPA was for that very reason, to give a little more time, but not to have to wait until town meeting.
Right. Perfect.
Christie,
Thank you.
At what point would you anticipate we'd actually have, like,
I would like to bring something back to the next select board meeting.
That'd be great.
and would that include the costs for the program at that point?
I would hope so. We just have to finish working out
Sure.
that scope.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Because at a minimum, it's a warrant article for
Right.
next meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Right. But yes.
Any other questions or comments? No? And with that, we move on to the fall town meeting warrant discussion.
Okay.
Presentations including opioid funds, settlement funds, and the Affordable Housing Trust. Who would like to start?
Do you want to speak to the articles, or are you?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
I have a presentation. We talked about it pretty in depth last time. There were two specific questions that were asked.
Yeah, I just couldn't remember what those were.
So one was, how unique are we in potentially combining the Housing Partnership Committee with the trust? And the other was, well, what if the trust is exploring a property and a private developer wants to come in and do a housing development? How would that work? So to the first question about best practices, we went back to the data dashboard and best practice trusts that we looked at when we created the trust. The good news is, since we created our trust, 2 more of our data dashboard towns have since created theirs. So when we look at that along with the best practice, we have 9 housing trusts in communities that no longer have a separate housing partnership committee. In most of those, most of the responsibilities have been delegated to the trust. And they don't even name the Housing Partnership Committee by name anymore. Some of the responsibilities have ended up in a few towns with the town planning office, which here we'll work cooperatively with the town planner and the assessor, but we don't think that's necessary. Lexington, Needham, Northborough, and Southborough still have separate defined housing partnership committees from the trust. With Northborough created their housing trust before the Mass General Law was created, so it operates as an independent 501c3. So we don't ever expect to see that combined. And then Reading and Westwood have housing partnership committees or the equivalent, but they don't yet have housing trusts. So we feel that we're in line with what's happening out there, best practice, and for efficiency standpoint, as far as moving forward. As far as the other question, going back to one of the guiding principles and how we defined how the trust will work. If the trust is pursuing a project and there's a competitive private development, unless there was an overly compelling reason that we feel the town wouldn't want that private development, and that would have to be led by another board, the planning board, and if it comes from site plan review for the select board commentary, not the trust, we would defer to the private developer. That part of our mission and our operating principles are to leverage the resources of the trust to support the creation of affordable housing. That is more efficient when it's done with private development, and the trust in a supportive funding investment role, as opposed to being a lead development organization or directly developing that sort of property. And we'll be talking about it at our meeting on Thursday, but we're happy informal conversations that codifying that in our operating principles would be something I expect the trust will vote, be more than happy to vote to do. So that, folks understand that we're not going to go out and compete with private developers to build something. If a private developer wants to come in and do a project, we'd rather step up and say, hey, we can help you and use our funds more efficiently.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you didn't need the 10 slides.
Perfect.
Perfect, thank you.
Just to kind of go over the warrant, so the first article is still on there as prior year bills, but we still don't have any, so that could be pulled off before you close the warrant. Chief Purcell and Chief Minardi will ask to come to the next meeting to discuss both this article for the fire department budget adjustment and then also the radios. Last night I went to this.
Christy, I thought we said we were all set with that, with those, both of those.
That's not.
With the radios? Well, I think we moved it from this week because we felt like
It was too much.
Okay.
There was other stuff.
Okay.
If you're all set though, that's fine. We can certainly.
I don't know, I feel like,
It's backup radios and replacement batteries is the article.
I think we said this, we didn't need the staffing from the fire department, but I
Right.
thought the radios,
okay,
we did want to hear more about it.
Okay.
okay.
Article 3 is the finance department budget adjustment. You didn't ask to hear about it. I just wanted to let you know that I spoke to the finance committee about it last night, and they voted to support that article unanimously. And then Recreation Department will come in. When looking at Article 6, the settlement funds, I think we had talked about Article 6 and 7. You had asked to discuss those at a subsequent meeting. I did also present them to the Finance Committee last night. They also voted to support them unanimously. So I'll just mention them right now. The settlement funds in Article 6 are a settlement of $950,000 that the town's receiving related to litigation with 129 East Main Street. As the board is aware, we'd initiated litigation related to the affordable housing requirements in the Westborough zoning bylaw. As part of that settlement, we received the $950,000. That goes into the general fund, which means it would close out to free cash. So this would be a transfer from free cash into the Affordable Housing Trust. There was a question last night about other potential uses of that money, and I explained that the settlement agreement actually requires us to support an article to move it to the Affordable Housing Trust because that was what it was about, and so all of the money would be used or transferred. For the opioid settlement funds, we had an article at the December 2022 town meeting where we had received about $224,000 from opioid settlement funds. The state is still talking about creating some sort of financial mechanism so that we can hold that money aside so that it will be spent for the purposes outlined in the subdivision agreements. However, that hasn't passed yet. So what we have done is move it into an article so that it can be held for the purposes of the subdivision agreements. This is an additional $38,000 that we've received. So again, moving it into that article to be spent for those purposes. We have not spent any opioid settlement funds. We are not unique in that. Lots of communities are still trying to understand how we can spend that money. And really the first piece of that is really creating a clear process to get that public engagement. So engagement specifically from folks who might be using opioids or they were affected by the use of opioids. The state has acknowledged that this is not simple. And so they have actually contracted with an agency that can help us with that. And so we had our first meeting with someone from one of the hospitals in Boston to talk to us about ways that we might approach this. There's also a series of webinars now that the state's putting on to help us understand how we can use that money. So right now it's currently just staff that's trying to help develop a process that we can propose. I did tell the Finance Committee last night, so I want to reiterate it. It's not the intention that this group of staff is spending the money or figuring out how to spend the money. We're just trying to create the process by which we might spend the money. Is it a committee? Is it, are we going to, do we think doing it regionally might work really well? Because I know the state's really encouraging that. So still having those conversations. But it's myself, the chiefs, Kim, and our public health director really working on it. So.
Christy, so this article would move it into, I guess, a separate account just to keep track of it.
Exactly.
And then at some point in the future, there would probably then be another warrant article that would move it into whatever this fund is, or?
No, because the article, the money in the article can be used to fund anything which is compliant with the subdivision agreement. Okay. So at whatever point we have an entity that decides, what that is. A lot of our conversations have been around, I think a lot of people have thought that some of that money should go to police and fire, Narcan training, things like that. The chiefs and most of our conversation is really like, how can we do intervention? We'd rather, be on the front end of this than kind of the responsive.
Or even what the chief talked about his, which was that the work with Spectrum and kind of the for those that have overdosed to provide them an outreach or whatever could potentially be used to help supplement that or whatever. I mean, I think there's a lot of ideas, so you have to still wait to hear.
There's a lot of ideas, and sort of the challenge is that we have these ideas, but we really need to get feedback from the community. So
because that's a requirement.
It's a requirement, and we certainly want to make sure that we're addressing the actual problem, not just the perceived problem. So,
well, what I like is, and I appreciate you clarifying that the work that's being done right now by town staff is really to kind of establish a framework for the process, because I can think of other even town departments that probably have some ideas as well, so they could kind of participate in that process in addition to the community. So that's great.
So that again was voted, as I said, by AFC. Those are the only ones that I had on the agenda tonight, just because I wasn't sure what time we would be. We'll have the library director come to the next meeting. You already heard from the conservation director. The school superintendent, I spoke with her, and the school committee's had some discussion about Article 11, and they've actually requested a joint meeting with the select board to discuss Article 11 and how they might move forward. We thought that, given sort of what we believe our presentations will be for the budget summit, there'd be good timing there, and then that way we would have all three boards together and could have the conversation, and we would have another meeting. So we expect to have that discussion at the budget summit on the 21st. And then the DPW director would still come in. One thing I want to note that I did note in my email, Article 15 has changed. It was a bylaw. It was a placeholder for a bylaw change that the DPW was proposing. That's been removed now, and instead it's a request for an increase in one of the articles from annual town meeting to address PFAS issues. So Chris will come in and talk about it, but I just wanted to note that from last version to version 4, that's a fairly substantial change.
Will you be adding some more article information to that article as well?
Yes, because I don't think there's any actually. Yep. And then, of course, we'll be adding the article for the community center. And, we'll continue to discuss whether or not we think we should add the article for youth and family services.
With respect to Article 16.7, I've neglected to mention that we did present to AFC, and with 6 members present, it was a unanimous vote to support both of those articles.
Great. I also know that Karen Henderson presented the cable TV article last night. I don't know what they voted, but I know that they've been trying to vote on the same nights as the presentation, so I suspect they voted on that.
Just a quick question on the warrant, on the Article 12, the roadway acceptance, Quick Farm Road. Who's the presenting?
DPW.
Okay. It just wasn't in the...
Oh, thank you. I'll add that.
Thanks.
So, I'm not sure at what point we discuss this. Maybe it's at our next meeting after we've had a chance to think about it. But I know in past when there have been hot topics. The order of things is always an interesting discussion, and we potentially have two really hot topics that are new, right? So youth and family services, what we just talked about, and of course the community center. So we should just think about the ordering of that in this. I don't have any ideas. It's not on our agenda to discuss tonight, but I would just put that out there as an early part of my issues and correspondence comment, but we should think about that.
Good point.
Yep.
Just to add, so when we order the articles, we typically put, so we typically do any articles that are going to address the current year's budget up front, then other financial articles, and then move on to maybe any capital articles if there are any, and then non-financial articles.
Right.
So just in the typical ordering, the two articles that you just mentioned would actually come up further in the warrant. They wouldn't be at the end.
Right, maybe
Yeah.
early, yeah.
Any other questions or comments on the fall town meeting warrant? Good for now. Request to approve the meeting minutes of August 23rd, 29th, and September 7th.
So moved.
Second.
All right, sounds good. Any questions, any edits?
No, I love it.
They were fantastic.
Awesome.
All in favor?
Thank you, Sheila.
Yes.
Well
Thank you,
done.
Sheila.
Walter Leslie is still watching our meeting. He said that AFC voted 9-0 for the cable article.
There you go, late breaking news.
And next, the town manager's report.
So we wanted to report on 2 Employee of the Month, so for July and August. In July, our Employee of the Month was Gretel Guzman-Ruck, who is the administrative assistant in the Recreation Department. And then in August, it was Teresa Shibaris, who's the administrative assistant in the Treasurer Collector's Office. Just as an update for our emergency assistance shelter, wanting the board to know that we've taken every opportunity we can to advocate the town's position related to the challenges that we're facing as a community, trying to support folks who are placed in Westborough, but really more strongly, stating that, Westborough as a community is happy to welcome these families and do our part in this crisis, but really it should be a shared effort among all 351 cities and towns, and really should be shared across the nation. So I've had a couple opportunities to speak in front of the Lieutenant Governor as well as the Secretary of Housing Livable Communities, and so we continue to to share that position. I will say, though, that with the activation of the National Guard, they've activated 250 members, and as part of that activation, they're actually working to consolidate locations. So we've actually gone from 81 communities to supporting the crisis to today we learned there were 76 communities supporting that crisis. And for the purpose, I understand it, obviously to deploy fewer National Guardsmen and to make it easier, but obviously that's only one small piece of the issue. So I do think that we've had much better communication from the state. They've had a few different calls where we've had really full access. Kim and I were on a call today where we were able to ask the Lieutenant Governor many questions, as long as we just kept filling the chat, and we had lots of questions and they all got answered, which I really appreciated her time and the ability to do that. So continue to work on that. Also, we work with Central Mass Housing Alliance. So they're a nonprofit in Worcester, but they got state funding to create a community coordinator for homeless families position. Their primary responsibilities are to facilitate communication and coordination, and right now just for the towns of Northborough and Westborough. So they let us give input into the position description, and they actually have invited us to share in the interview process. So that's great. The Waste Management Exploratory Committee, just kind of wanting to give the board an update and just sort of remind you where we are. So though the board accepted the recommendation of the Waste Management Exploratory Committee to pursue a full curbside program, just as a reminder, following that, we found out that Harvey's, owned by Waste Connections, was actually continuing to be willing to keep the transfer station open. So we've sort of shifted our discussion to learn more about how we can increase recycling while maintaining access to the transfer station. And that's really where those conversations have headed. We had a great meeting with Harvey's. They feels like they're really open to some of our ideas, which is great. So continuing to meet with them, and then we were able to share that back to the Waste Management Exploratory Committee. And we actually committed to giving you that update today. So I don't know if you want to add anything. No? Okay.
Less is more.
All right. And then we hired a new economic development coordinator. So following a recruitment process that included the chair of the EDC and community development director, Mark Zeff has been selected to serve as the town's next economic development coordinator. He brings experience gained serving in several diverse private sector roles as well as volunteer activities, including his membership on the Westborough Economic Development Committee. So he'll be stepping down from the EDC and start his employment on September 18th. And following that, he'll come and meet the board if you haven't already met him. In the Board of Health has been assisting the migrant families day to day, such as appointments, legal aid benefits, prenatal care, really hoping that as the National Guard comes and that coordinator comes, that we can lift some of these responsibilities out of that department. September is Suicide Prevention Month, which is an opportunity to raise awareness of suicide, eliminate stigma, share resources and services. 988, sorry. 988 is a free and confidential suicide and crisis lifeline available 24/7. Individuals can reach out to 988 at any time to be connected to a volunteer or call taker on staff who can provide emotional support and compassionate listening. Related to the arbovirus, the Public Health Department has reported the third human case of West Nile virus from Hampton County. The Massachusetts Department of Public Health reports 108 West Nile virus positive mosquito samples from Massachusetts, including Worcester County. In response to increasing West Nile virus activity, we were raised to a moderate risk. And there's also 5 EEE mosquito samples have been detected in Worcester County. In partnership with the Senior Center, we're providing 100 doses of the flu vaccination to our seniors. And then the Board of Health continues to do food Title V, pool, and nuisance inspections. The police department, the chief attended the Civic Club meeting, which he mentioned, where he gave his presentation. And the department has started another hiring process to fill current vacancies. The DPW welcomed a new hire, David LaRose, to the sewer division. The Westborough Fire Department provided annual CPR and first aid training to DPW staff. In addition to the valuable training, the event is another example of town staff collaboration. These types of events provide great opportunities to develop and improve individual relationships between departments. The DPW director participated in the American Public Works Association 2023 annual conference, which included multiple education seminars. The director delivered a presentation related to routine public infrastructure maintenance. Other highlights was discussion about a shrinking workforce and struggles to find skilled staff. Key point, in the not too distant future, municipalities and businesses will compete to be preferred customers of vendors. Communities large and small are struggling to implement climate plans, including transitions to EV fleets. Key point, huge costs involved, not just for the vehicles themselves, but more significantly with the second order impacts related to facilities, meaning garage upgrades, staff, expertise, and material handling. And that is my report.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry. I actually, one thing I didn't write in here, we held, yesterday, we held interviews for the finance director position. So we had 2 panels. One was a senior leadership team panel. It was myself, Kim, our DPW director, our fire chief, and our community development director. And then our second panel was our chief assessor. It was more of a finance team, so it was our chief assessor, the chair of the advisory finance committee, Sean, as chair of the select board, and also the director of administration and finance for the schools. So I think we felt really confident that we had a good candidate, so more to come on that, but it was a good process.
Thank you. And with that, we move to issues and correspondence of the Select Board. Do I have a volunteer? All right, Ian, go ahead.
You want me to go? Okay. A few quick things. No real updates on a liaison, except for the fact that the Golf Club Building Reuse Committee is scheduled to present to this board at our next meeting. So we are just finalizing the presentation that will come to the board on that, but I think we'll be ready and to deliver that at the next meeting. From an upcoming events date, I can highlight again too, but Arts in Common is coming up, 10th anniversary of Arts in Common, so a big anniversary year. That's on September 30th at Bay State Commons. And I know we signed Eagle Scout commendations, but there is a Eagle Scout Court of Honor coming up the 24th of September for all of us to be there. I will be there in person. I've been asked to do presentation of commendations across the board, but all board members are welcome to attend if they can at the Congregational Church. I'll get around, but I think it's 2 p.m., but if folks are interested, I can, if you didn't get the invitation, I can send you that information. That's all that I had.
Okay. Very briefly, the Affordable Housing Trust continues to work on its active projects. One of the things we're realizing is properties that become available to us, we're now expecting that they will all have nuances or challenges. And so we're working through those. We appreciate the neighborhood's patience with 3 Baylor Avenue as we're it turns out that in 2010, there was a small oil leak from an outside tank. The 500 pages of documentation from Mass DEP says the situation has been resolved, but the lender who's financing the construction loan for the project has some open concerns. So we're pulling everyone together to get that resolved so that can move forward and we can close on that property. And we believe we've addressed all the outstanding issues and we'll be able to move forward with the closing for 6 Beach Street. I'm also happy to report that the conversations between the Housing Trust and the Westborough Housing Authority have shifted from should we work together, but how should we work together to look at not just the development of the Housing Authority's property that's currently vacant, but also how that might integrate with redevelopment of some of the properties that they already have. And looking at the age of some of the buildings, what scenarios might we be able to work with, with the trust and the Housing Authority working together towards those projects. And so there are cross meetings of board members at this point. We're looking at the best path forward so we can get those projects better defined and moving forward as well.
Great.
So.
Any on this thing?
I would just say I would like to say thanks to Westbrook Connects for this past weekend's event at the high school. Fantastic event. I was there for probably close to 2 hours. Had a really great opportunity to talk to so many people in the community and outside the community who have come to support our community. I would like to extend a thank you to Amber and her team for providing the services of the high school, as well as recognition of our town staff who attended and provided information in a grueling hot auditorium, I'll say. So,
Gymnasium.
Excuse me, gymnasium. But I think it was a wonderful event attended by all. And again, I appreciate Westbrook Connects for doing that.
Yeah, ditto to that. Patrick, thank you so much for that acknowledgement. It was a lot of work. And it's always, it's great when there's attendance, but what we've seen over the past 3 years is that the exhibitors find a lot of value in networking with each other, so it's as much a benefit, so that's great. Just a quick update on the liaison front. So on the Hockomock Pond Reuse Committee, no significant update. We're still waiting on the report from the Yukon TAB program. You'll remember that we received a grant, and they're doing kind of an initial assessment on to help us prepare for any sort of type public comment and thoughts on reuse based on the passive recreation concept that was brought forward previously. And I'm also working with our town manager and fire chief and conservation director to make sure that we're coordinating appropriately as it relates to the regional rec, or the rec 911. So that we're not, the committee isn't getting ahead of its skis, so to speak, on any work. So that coordination is happening. Let's see here. A couple thoughts to consider, and I'm not sure sort of where these belong. So it was brought to my attention, and this is not the first time, but sort of the absence of a trash receptacle in front of Town Hall. There's no place to, there's one further down, but there's none here that I'm aware of, and then over in front of Forbes. So I don't know if that's something that we have around that we could add, but that was brought to my, being that those two buildings are used frequently by a lot of staff and we don't have nearby trash. So put that out there, keeping our community green and clean. The other piece I'll bring to the board's attention, particularly in light of the community center discussion we had tonight. Some astute folks in the community following our executive session agenda items have reminded me of if this was indeed an opportunity for a community center, how does this coincide with the golf club committee's, proposed redevelopment, the committee? So I think we're all well aware of that. I bring it not only to our attention, but making sure the public understands we have broad field of vision as we're thinking about these things, and certainly would expect that to be part of a larger community conversation. And then to that end, not looking for an answer, but what would be the timing on the town meeting public discussions around the community center to answer questions? We talked about that, and I don't think we talked about that tonight. So
Right.
I'm not looking for an answer right now, but just we should get those on the calendar quickly. So that's all.
Thank
That's all I
you.
got. And thank you, Westborough TV, in case Sean forgot.
I would have, so thank you very much. No, and I just have a few things. The Westborough's Veterans Advisory Board has multiple upcoming events. One of those is this coming Saturday for veterans in Westborough. It is a free catered breakfast at the Senior Center this coming Saturday at 10 a.m. They ask that you RSVP. You can call Kristen at the Senior Center. That number is 508-366-3000. Also, on the 29th, earlier today, we approved the Beano permit. I now understand that Beano is bingo. And so that event is on the 29th at 7 p.m. at also at the Senior Center. And then finally, on the 30th, there is a Westborough flag burning ceremony at Veterans Freedom Park at 1 p.m. You are happy to bring your old used and worn flags there. The ceremony will be at 1 p.m. I'm looking forward to attending and thank the Westborough Veterans Advisory Board, the Westborough Police and Fire and Public Works for supporting this event, and hope to see folks there. And with that, can I get a motion?
I'll move into executive.
Oh, wait.
You only for the minutes. You only have to do the minutes.
We'll have to
Sorry.
do the minutes.
No, you only have to do for executive session, the second one, the minutes.
Not the first one.
Okay.
Yep.
I move to enter an executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to act under the authority of the Select Board to approve executive session minutes from August 8th, 2023, August 23rd, 2023, August 29th, 2023, and September 7th, 2023.
I declare that an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the board's negotiating, litigating, and bargaining position. The board will not be reconvening in open session after executive session. Can I get a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes?
Welch, yes?
Marshall, yes.
Keo, yes. Thank you, Westboro TV. Have a good night.